So I guess we call to order the joint meeting of the Rockport Select Board and the Rockport Budget Committee to go over the proposed budget that we've received from the town manager. It includes input from each of the department heads, and then the town manager has gone through those inputs and evaluated it and made a recommendation. And tonight is our opportunity to ask the various department heads questions, express concerns if you see something in the budget. You know, some of the budgets, I think as you go through them, you'll see maybe this isn't where we want to spend a lot of time, and other budgets we do want to spend time. But please do feel free to ask questions, get clarifications, and you know, ultimately we'll have, the select board will have the April 1st meeting to sort of go through in detail, but we really want to understand from the budget committee what areas of concern you see or questions you have. So I understand we're going to start with Diane for general assistance. So,
Yep. And that's on page 161.
And John, if you want to add anything to.
Yeah, just to kick off, this was one of the areas we outlined. We talked last week. Was it last week? No, I'm sorry. Earlier this week. I don't even know what day it is. Earlier this week, we talked about, this was one of the areas highlighted. Diane has been, she's been under quite a bit of incredible amount of work. And you know, if you look on page 162, I think that starts to give you a picture of what we're talking about and the growth that this department has had. I mean, I think a lot of people assume Rockport is a wealthy community on the coast of Maine. We're a small town. We're not a place where, you know, you have to think about things like shelter for unhoused people or, you know, a great deal of homelessness left and right. This year has changed my perspective on those matters. And again, as we talked the other night, it's not necessarily about, these are matters that are Rockport focused. These are regional problems that we are a bit of a magnet for trying to find housing for those who don't have it. And that then requires or turns a number of caseworkers to Diane as our GA administrator. And so when you look at the page at 162, clients seen in 2020 of 18 clients. Now that's fiscal year 2020. We had, you know, the pandemic, it was at the end of that, but 18 clients in a whole year. So you're talking about 1.5 every month. It doesn't work out that way, but that's how it turned out. In the fiscal year 23, we're at 34. So we've already doubled in that time. And then this says fiscal year end 24, but of course right below that. And this is true for every category we have. So this is a 6-month number in that last category that you're looking at here. We already had 39 as of that point by the end of calendar year end of 23. So those are just numbers. And obviously with that comes dollar figures. Dollar figures that Diane is working with our, the two, in particular, the two motels that are operating and are accepting vouchers for general assistance. There are changes that are being proposed in the legislature to change the way that the general assistance program works, but I'm going to be completely honest with you. The legislative process has turned a bill which was supposed to be a compromise between advocates for the unhoused and municipal leaders and DHHS, and the legislative process turned that on its ear, and now the bill as it stands now is something that is people in Diane's position are being expected to have language training, and it just a whole nother level of responsibility. For those who don't know, GA program is a program of Department of Health and Human Services. It is not a town program, but it is given to the towns to manage a state program. So we're using state rules in a town office. The town gets reimbursed 70% of the cost that of all those vouchers that Diane has to approve. We get 70% reimbursement for that. So we're out 30% of all those costs, and secondarily, the time. And as you can see here, I think it lays it out pretty carefully what that time means. And that's the problem that I see overall in this budget, and that's why this looks a lot different than what we've been doing in the years past. In that we're at a crisis point on this part of the budget, and I think that's something that needs to be addressed. I think Diane probably can speak to it better than I, because she's on the front lines of this every day. And when I say every day, that's the case. Usually, as we said, 1.5 a month in 2018 or 2020, not a big deal. That's something that our office can manage. When you're talking about more than that, and repeat clients, and clients that you just outright are turning down because there's no room at either of those motels, you're not just managing that you're becoming a de facto caseworker for each one of these people. And that's a step that we've been trying to take to minimize. I think, Diane, maybe you can talk about that and our recent work with VOA on how that's helped a little bit.
Yeah, so, VOA has been very helpful. I spoke with them a few weeks ago, and I have someone coming in 4 hours a week, and they're not charging us to help out with the caseload of general assistants, because most of them aren't coming in. They're coming in because they're homeless, but they really need more services than what we can provide, because they're mostly mental health cases, and VOA has a lot of resources. So we're trying to find the right place for them and the right placement and get them the assistance that they need. So Rockland and Camden has a contract with them at this point in time. And like I said, I met with them to see if maybe this is something that we could jump on board with come July and split the cost 3 ways, which is the number that I put in here for $34,000. And once again, they're not only stepping up to help me, but they're also stepping up to help our officers. So when there is a mental health case, they're bringing in the appropriate people to help assist to go in that our officers aren't even trained for. So it's very important that we have their resources on our side and to help us get through the process of the difficult cases that we have that arise. Because it's not getting any better. And like I said, most of them are mental health cases that we are not qualified to handle, nor should we be. So they have the resources to be able to do that for us. And once again, they're just helping us until we can get to the budget process, and hopefully we'll be able to approve that to get more assistance. We can't handle the caseloads that are coming in right now, nor do we have the resources in order to do so. So this is why I'm proposing that we hop on board with Camden and Rockland and split the costs 3 ways. It's $103,000, but it's, like I said, it's not only to help our GA, it's to help our police officers and keep them safe as well. And they're available 24/7. So,
do we know if Camden and Rockland are seeing similar case
Yes, they
loading? So
are.
it's sort
They
of a
are.
region-wide issue.
yeah, because the lady that I work with, she works it for each town, and it's the same deal. And we're also experiencing, if someone comes in and fills out the GA application, well, they're also reaching out to so many other resources. So you got 5 or 6 people working on one person. So we're trying to eliminate that process and figure out the right resources for the individual, because every single case is different. So it really helps to be able to bounce things off them and me and the officers, and because we're all familiar with the individuals that are coming in and just figuring out the right place for them. It's because GA isn't like GA used to be, like John said. It's completely different. It's way beyond what we can control at this point or are qualified to handle. Yes.
Madam Chair, how do you want to handle questions if we have any? Do you want to start with you guys, just work around the table, or raise your hand and?
Unless it
Have
gets
at it.
out of control, I guess I'd be inclined, if somebody's got a question, whether on the select board or the budget committee, you know, we can see how that works. And-
Far be it for me not to start then. So, I noticed under the general assistance wages, there's nothing budgeted.
Right.
It's
Is
in the
that-
town manager budget.
Is that folded into the existing salary or the hourly? Okay,
Yep, that's right.
good to know.
Yep.
So, in looking at the rental assistance as provided, current year, we've done 34 and we're at 33.3. And
Mark, could
last
you
year-
just give a line, just so.
Yeah, well, okay, I'm just going down the line. It's,
Yeah, no,
30,
it's just a little
33,
faster.
3360.
Okay,
So, current year, we've assisted 34 people, and we've spent 33.3. Last year, we serviced 22 people for 40,000. So that's a little, I'm just curious as to, we've serviced, 12 more people and spent $6,500 less. That was one little point. And I guess where I'm going with that is, in my view, maybe 65,000 might be a tad too much, if you're using the numbers from the last 2 years.
but we're already,
You're at 33 for 34 people.
but right now, we're at 39 for a half a year, just this year, right?
33.
33,360
No, I
some
know,
odd
but I mean,
dollars.
we have 39 people for a
Well,
half a
I'm
year.
just comparing the half a year,
Yep.
and so the other number represents the whole year? So the 22 represents the whole year, is that
That's
what you're
right.
saying?
That's right.
So 40,000 for 22 for a
Yep.
whole year, 34 is 33.
Right.
So it's
well,
gonna
I-
be close to 66, if you say
All
it's
right,
half a year.
that sort of answers that. And the other
Yep.
part is, are there any, my recollection of our donated monies that are not specifically earmarked for any particular thing used to be in the neighborhood of 40-some thousand? 44, maybe, rings a bell?
It's like 23,000.
Is it down? I mean, we get reimbursed if we use some of that. I'm just trying to find a way if we can use some of that to offset.
We save that for individuals that do not qualify for general assistance.
Yeah,
Yeah, and you indicated that that's because that's what the donors have requested, that it be used for that
Yes.
purpose?
okay, that's good for me.
Yeah, it's an unfortunate situation where it's all sort of coming down on the towns. The state, nobody else is dealing with it. The county's an obvious source for something like this. but-
Yeah, and unfortunately, if someone comes in for general assistance, we have to help them regardless
Yeah.
of what we put in the budget.
Right.
We, as a municipality, we have to assist them.
The Madomic Valley School District just put out a thing last night that said they have 69 homeless families attending that district. And those homeless families could easily end up here because we're the only one that has housing available.
Yeah, so
That's
Rob,
what I was wondering. We're sort of a mecca because we've got the two
we have the two hotels that accept general assistance where most towns don't even have hotels that will take a GA voucher.
So
So I
if people come up from other communities, but because we have the two motels, then the residents of Rockport pay for that general
That is correct. If they
assistance.
come into the town office, we have to assist them regardless of where they are from.
So the last thing is, anything that's not spent in what we're looking at now for the 24-25 would be encumbered and then used to offset what would be asked for next year?
No. I mean, we're already significantly overspent in general assistance.
But I'm saying if you don't spend something in any one given line, can you encumber it and apply it towards the upcoming year's projected budget?
Not if the overall budget has gone over, which is the case here.
Okay?
Just out of curiosity too, the VOA, I know they're a good resource. Is there like only one provider of that service, or are there other people that can come in also? Not that they need to be competitive or anything, but do they provide different services? Have more man hours, anything like that? Or is VOA basically the only one on the block?
Well, I think the reason why VOA got in the mix, Clay, was that they initially had gotten a contract with Knox County, and So they started providing service, Knox County, all the sheriff's offices. And then that spread amongst the county. And then from there, Chief Carroll, who was the sheriff, went to Rockland. And, so it sort of just kind of grew that way organically as opposed to, more of a formal process. And I think, honestly, the impetus of it, I can't say specifically when, but I think it was COVID. There was some COVID money that had gone into that initially when the county had purchased,
Right.
that contract. But this was, Chief Carroll and Chief Gagné had sort of talked about this as last year was a 3-year, a 3-town arrangement. With our budget last year, I was not at all comfortable with coming back before everybody and saying, let's add another 35,000 on top of everything else. But this was, as you saw with like a lot of the things on the police side, this was pushed off. And frankly, if it wasn't such a crisis point, I might have pushed this off another year. But given what we're seeing and just the unending number of clients coming in on a daily basis, it was, I think our hands were forced a little bit in terms of to look back, and the fact we didn't even know when we put this in the budget that they were going to be willing to provide some services now to us free of charge. Just
Right,
because
yeah.
there's also that impact of if we help out Rockport now, that will also, like as Diane said, it's sort of regional. So if Rockport's handled, Rockland's handled, Camden's handled, there's contact with all those looking for service. It won't sort of unbalance the 3 towns. I don't know if that makes sense, but I think they thought of it as a way to sort of get in to potentially hold the fires at bay if they could. So it's been 3 weeks has she been?
Yeah.
About 3 weeks. So, and it's already having some real benefits in taking those clients. And the real issue is that it takes time to sort of do that. And so I look at this as 34,000 as a chance to take each of those clients and not have to pay necessarily for people who should be seeking out assistance somewhere else. It's not as if we are just willingly handing out GA whenever we can, but the way that the law is written, the burden is on us really to sort of write the check. But if we can get them client services and get their caseworkers working for them as opposed to making Diane be their caseworker, I think we may save more than 34,000 and what we're writing out. So, to Mark's point, I don't know if it was your point, but
Oh, I've got points.
I know you do.
You're ready.
but like that's one where this might be 34,000 that saves 20,000 somewhere else. That's my hope, because I feel like we need to find a way to stop the bleeding on this, and this is one way to do it.
So it can get these people in the more appropriate setting for what kind of help they really need, rather than just a rental voucher.
So sort of where I was headed with questioning about, because there were no wages indicated for the general assistance position. And it's in your town manager department wages, is that?
Yeah.
So that's page 115.
We did that last year. We included.
But I'm curious as
Yeah.
to what the breakout is of that, because if there's a lot more assistance being offered,
Right.
what type, is that line for
No.
your general assistants stay the same, or what
Yeah.
type of raise did they experience?
The same raise that most other employees got per policy, so 3.2% for COLA, and then whatever steps may be applied for all
Right.
employees.
Well, I just look at the end line, it says
Right.
6%, I don't know how that breaks down,
Well, you've got
if there's only
contracts.
2 of you are in
Right,
there.
yeah. No, there's contracts, there's a whole bunch of things that could go into
So that's just.
where the
that's
6%
just
is, but.
Department wages.
Right, but I guess what I'm saying is that the wage for, there isn't an adjustment per se to, department wages to account for this overage. The adjustment is in the 34,000. That's really where you can identify the change in the budget.
So there's no general assistance stipend.
It's, right.
That's where I'm trying to
That's where
get
you're
to.
going.
Right, so
Yeah.
last year, when we went through after we went through the review of all salaries, we had a chance at that point, and it made more sense to lump those wages, that stipend, in with, the hourly wage for Diane's position. So it's all in one, and it rises with 3.2% or, you know,
Because
2%.
Diane works the same hours, whether
Right.
she's working on general
So,
assistance
We're
or.
not identifying them separately.
So as we go, and there might be other people that have things that are clumped together in their wages.
Yep.
Could you give us a breakdown of what is clumped into that, what their responsibilities are?
And, yeah.
Well, I
we
mean,
can talk
I could
about-
think of one in particular that might be next to you that has a lot of extra responsibilities.
Yeah.
Whether it's the Opera House or any other thing, but
Yeah,
that helps us to know
Yeah,
what
yeah.
that particular
yeah,
wage is for that position and what the salary is for the person.
right.
And there might be other people within
Yeah.
the structure, but just if you could break it down, that would be,
Yeah, no, this is one where there really isn't a change that, in terms of duties, responsibilities alike. The hope is that adding exterior help will lessen the burden, that Diane's position has, because it's difficult for her to do the other parts of her position right now when she's spending a good part of her day dealing with 39 cases in 6 months.
No,
That's,
and
that's that mix, I think, that everyone needs to understand, yeah.
And do those clients then go over to a VOA office? Or does the VOA person come in our office? to-
Yeah.
Yep, so Allison comes in and assists with me 4 hours a week right now. And we discuss the cases that I do have, and she takes on the ones that don't really need general assistance, but they need other assistance. So we go through the pile, and then she calls them on whenever, her spare time, and she handles those for me. So we look over the application and be like, well, this person's in the wrong place. It's because the caseworkers don't really know how to handle the case. They just, well, go to the town, fill out a GA application. Well, half of them are not made out the way that they should be, or are asking for what they need, because they don't know what they need. So we're basically doing the caseworker's job by evaluating each case and trying to get them the help that they need.
And this is DHHS caseworkers that send them to?
No,
who are
usually
the
they're from
caseworkers?
behavioral health or Maine Health, or, they're from all over.
Sorry, but we don't.
But
No,
it's
it's a good
easy for
question.
them to just say, well, go to the town and fill out a GA application. Okay, well,
Yeah.
are they covered by us or by VOA? Should there be a violation of trust in anything that gets released intentionally or unintentionally?
is who covered? The client?
No, who covers us,
Are you talking about liability?
liability? Where's the liability fall if the VOA person screws up and says something they shouldn't say?
Well, there's a MOU that we sign, and you're more than welcome to look
Is-
through it.
As long as that piece of paper is good, great, but I just was curious.
Yeah. I think it's great to have this as a resource myself.
No, it is, I mean, because Diane is busy enough as it is, but
And if it can save us money by getting people into the right
That's right.
place rather than just issuing
And that's
vouchers.
the problem, they don't know which direction to go to. Unfortunately, the caseworkers should already know that before they send them to the town, but they don't. So we're trying to get them in the right direction, and it will save us money, because, putting someone in a hotel that has mental health issues isn't the right way to go, or someone
And
that
they'll
just.
be back.
Or
right?
someone that
Because
just got out of jail come to us because they're homeless. Well, putting them in a hotel is not the right place for them either. Okay, so, and jail isn't the right place for them either. So it's, we're trying to do the right thing for them and get them in the right place, and,
Okay, anything else on, let's have questions? And then we can lobby our state legislators to
Yeah,
try to do something at a level that makes more sense, but.
yes, and that's another
Okay.
whole,
please,
yeah, rather
All
than
right.
put it up back onto the town.
Yeah.
We're,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, correct.
exactly. That was the key point, Eric, is that the 100%. And they said, well, what if we had 100%, but then we had all these other issues? Rockport is, but what if you're Hope? What if you're Appleton? What if you're Cushing? Like, none of us can really handle what the burden that they want to set, and
But another thing too,
It's-
I mean, even if they do say 100%, the requirements that they're expected the municipalities to do and act as caseworkers
mandates.
is still over the top.
Yeah.
Because once again, we're not qualified to do that or to handle what they're asking us to do.
Yeah.
So that's another whole issue down
Another
the
reason it
road.
makes sense to try to get a professional like Volunteers of America involved in this.
Yes.
Okay, well, thank you.
Yes.
So any changes? I don't know if you want to make that,
Does anybody want to make any changes to the?
or do you want to pass it over, or bring it back? I think that's sort of a,
Yeah, I don't think we can, other than think that you didn't get the number, the projected number
Yeah.
right, but it's pretty clearly based on actual experience. It doesn't help us to artificially lower a budget number that we're gonna exceed, so we've gotta, as uncomfortable, as an unpleasant, this isn't something we really wanna deal with, but we don't have a lot of choice.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's a requirement by the state
Yeah,
to,
yeah, and other than, the old trope of let's find some grant money,
right.
that's all you can. Okay.
So Public Works is next, page 235.
Thank you.
Thank you.
so, this is obviously a big ticket item, so we go from usually a GA program, which is on the lower side of the cost side, but this is obviously on the opposite end. Clay had asked on Monday night about sort of the capital planning portion of this, and so I kind of want to go, I don't want to go right to the budget lines, as I kind of want to go past that and talk about what's a little bit further in terms of what we're looking at, in terms of roads and what that would mean, and then maybe go back to the line items, if that's okay. All right? So if you go to page 242, and again, we have some updated numbers on this, what we're showing here for numbers. This was, this has been an evolving conversation probably since September, so even up until today, there's things that are changing and moving, and particularly for those, for the two of you that are new, this is one where you start down one road, and then before you know it, you're talking about something else entirely. 2 years ago, for example, we had a list of roads, and we're ready to go in the fall, and we got to budget time, and it was very clear that Park Street was in a bad way and far worse off than we had anticipated. And so we went from a list of 7, 8, 9 roads that were going to be presented to the board to, well, Park Street, and we need to effectively dig up that road, put a new base under it, and go through a real stronger rebuild. That's what happened. That happened very quickly, and it's so you have to let the winter and the road tell the story. We've, again, for those who are new, so over the past few years, the town had spent somewhere in the neighborhoods of $225,000 a year for several years on paving and road construction. And the year about, I think it was 2021, the board increased that to 400 or so, 400,000. But it was as I came in, there was, at that point into this position, it became pretty clear that we had some roads that were falling apart. We had some real needs. And then, of course, shortly thereafter, we had that storm on October of '21 where we lose the culvert on Robinson Drive. And so that kick-started an effort from staff and really talking with the budget committee, the board, about infrastructure investment. And how do we get ahead, or how do we at least keep pace with our roads that are crumbling? Because the moment you build something, it's falling apart, right? That's sort of the dirty little secret of infrastructure is the moment you It's like the new car you drive off the lot. It loses value immediately. The problem is that you have to have a plan so that you can keep pace with that falling apart. And what's happened is, so we have 72 miles of road, roughly. And if you're on a 10-year paving cycle, you need to pave 7.2 miles of road every year to make sure that you're on pace to be paving once every 10 years every road. Now, that's a rule of thumb. Some roads are very busy and they get beat up and it's 7 years. And some roads are these tiny, side streets that get very little traffic and it's 15. But that sort of rule of thumb gives you an idea of where you're starting from and where you're ending. And if you're budgeting with that idea in mind, that at least gives you something to start with, okay? So I know a lot of you who've been here have heard that, but I just want to go over that ground because it's an important sort of baseline in how I budget and where I'm looking at it. So a couple of years ago, the select board and the budget committee agreed to increase that amount to the amount that would approximate it would take to pave that 10-year paving cycle, okay? Now, we went through that and we talked about there's the costs of what you can afford this year, and then there's looking at the condition of the road, what you probably should be paying for, because you've deferred maintenance for so many years as a town, there are many roads that are in bad condition, but you don't have the money to get to all of them. And so what we've done is we've gone out through over a 5-year cycle, looking at all the roads that are out there and saying, okay, these are the roads that are bad, but this is what you can afford to do. So you take what's left, and you throw it on the next year, what's the next worst, and then you sort of go through 5 years of that. And what we had found out at that point, we first started talking about this when I got back here, was roughly, there was about $3 million that we weren't going to be able to afford by staying on that 7.2 miles of road a year cycle. That also doesn't account for things that have nothing to do with paving. So large culverts, box culverts, catch basins, sidewalks, things that are also really, really expensive, but are part of managing a road system. So how do you balance all those things out? So for 2 years, we've been focused almost exclusively on paving and paving projects. It's been paving projects out of the village largely, so less catch basins, less structured drainage, less sidewalks, which means you're sort of just straight ahead and you're building road base and you're building ditches and you're cutting brush. And that works generally pretty well to do that. The challenge is that when you start getting in these other areas that are an issue, that have some of those other parts, the costs grow. So looking at this sheet here on 242, this is sort of the outline of that idea. So you have a top 3 section of road, 3 roads, Main Street, Route 1 to Village, Main Street, Simon's Corner to Route 1, and Mechanic Street, engineering only. I'll talk a bit about that because that's a bit of an outlier from the other 2. And then you have the rest of these here, which are Main Street, Simon's Corner, Annis Lane, and so forth. I'm not going to read them. You know that. If you look at the subtotal of the top 3, that's $970,000. And that's not 7.2 miles of road. So why is that? Well, so when you dig in further into the numbers here, Main Street, Route 1 to Village, has been an issue long time. Everyone knows every corner where all the water sits and the trees that sit on that corner, and the road has eroded and has been terrible. And we can all, in our minds, close our eyes, and we can picture exactly the spots I'm talking about. We've been engaged in sort of preparing for that. Our public works crew has been out on Main Street in that section cutting brush extensively. I don't know the last time that area was cut back, but it had to have been some time ago, and there had to have been some substantial trees that were probably bypassed in that effort. Our public works crew is doing a great job out there. They're working with homeowners Some are ecstatic at losing some trees that they don't want to have in front of their yards. Some are not quite ecstatic about that, but we're trying to work with them to try to find the balance between, that privacy, but also knowing there's a right-of-way and a ditch line that has to be maintained. Otherwise, the water's in the road and the road erodes. And when the road erodes, sorry, I know that sounds funny, the pavement falls apart and down, on we go. So the first priority of these roads and the condition of these roads is Main Street, Route 1 to Village. So that is cutting back trees, ditching, and a similar effort is what we've talked about in that area to what we did on Park Street. That is, and you can see here, there's the additional contracted labor. So there's 55,000 in culverts replacement, 410,000 in additional contracted labor, which is paving as well as that same process of grinding the road and then preparing it for a binder coat of pavement. So there's some additional materials for gravel and stone. We're talking about putting new culverts in, replacing culverts. But that's the number one. That's the number one project that we've been preparing for through winter, but obviously it would need approval from the board to go forward and from the budget.
Okay, you're talking Route 1 to the Village, which is the road right down here at the end of the hill.
Oh, I'm sorry, I got it on the wrong line. Yeah,
Yes.
you're right. 194,000 was the grinding, and the 162 was the paving. Sorry, I was on
That's
the wrong
not the
line.
question.
Yeah,
You're calling Route 1
I was on the wrong line, that's why.
So you're talking Route 1
Right,
from Simonton Corner?
Simon's Corner Route 1.
Okay,
Yeah,
because you
sorry.
weren't making any
I know,
sense.
that's why, sorry, I was on the wrong one. The second, okay, so let's go back to the first one then. The 410 is a contracted number though, and that contracted number is largely for stormwater and the creation of a sidewalk along that stretch of road. Now, this has been a project that has been talked about for, how long, Helen?
At least 10 years.
Okay.
Back when Steve Beveridge was still.
It's been talked about, it was meant to be part of the town's infrastructure bond from 5 years ago, 7 years ago? Yeah. And the cost in that time, the project was supposed to be 150,000 or so. And when that project went out to bid, it was nearing 400,000. So that project got shelved from the use from that infrastructure bond, and it's been sitting on a shelf ever since. So those two issues, whether it's those two stretches of Main Street, effectively, are those areas of priority. Now, Mike has had some work and has looked at some different opportunities in terms of how we can perhaps save in doing a sidewalk, but without perhaps some of the pieces that are a little bit more expensive, like granite curbing, like cement, pavers for the sidewalk instead of just using paving. And so he's got some costs that he can talk about. But when we put this together, we didn't have those numbers, so that's where we're starting from. So you've got those two stretches of Main Street that are very different projects, but very costly. But again, they don't really get you to the 7.2 miles of road. And so the reason why I want to bring this up is that I don't know that we can afford to do anything different. And if we could, I would say, great, ignore what I'm saying and push ahead. But I wanted to show these other streets, whether it's the Main Street beyond Simon's Corner, or Innes Lane, or South Street, Meadow Street, South Hope. I mean, there are a number of roads that need attention now, but we can't afford them, I don't believe, right now. As much as I would love to say we could afford and get on that 7.2 miles of road, that's something I think that the town has to talk about, is how much they're going to pay for all of these different pieces that are outside of paving. We've sort of set that number as, that what would it cost to do 7.2 miles of road? but when we start talking about these other pieces of it, we can't afford it, or we have to think differently. So that's the sort of the first wave of what I want to talk about in terms of what's in this public works budget.
Okay, again, it's just, you say Route 1, Main Street, Route 1 to the village.
Yeah.
But Main Street from School Street down to the
School
bridge.
Street.
Summer Street.
Summer Street.
Oh, Summer Street.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's
yeah.
all new within the last 5 years or so. So there's no need to dig all of that. It's got a
sidewalk is-
brand-new
Oh,
sidewalk.
yeah,
and all
yeah,
that.
right,
So-
absolutely.
Is this estimate based on going down to the point where the new stuff starts,
It's the new stuff to the town office.
to the town office?
Yep,
So from Summer Street towards the town.
From
Yes.
Summer Street over to, okay,
yeah.
So
okay.
dovetailing on Helen a little bit there, the piece that's down there might get nothing to do with putting the sidewalk in, but there are two drain portions there that I've never seen water run uphill. And every bit of water that has gone down from Summer down to the bridge in years past has washed the road away on the other side. So when that's done, is there a way to incorporate those drains that are already there? So in other words, tilted back so they go into the holes they were meant to?
Yeah, we certainly can do some maintenance or moving if
And,
we have to.
and one of those cement pads too is pretty fouled up.
Yeah,
Yeah, one of them we do have down to repair come spring or replace. And yeah, we would certainly look at fixing those.
Yeah, no, I just,
Those going under the sidewalk, they plug up with sand from sanding, you know.
yeah, they never get any water in to
No,
flush
right.
them out.
So they need to be looked at when that road is done, yes.
Perfect.
I think also on that, one of my frustrating things, I know we've already kind of come too far with the sidewalk talk and it's most likely going to go in, but for, 395,000, as it says in the note down there, just to add the sidewalk. It sure would be nice to have a sidewalk, obviously, but the totals of some of the other stuff are less than that. And a sidewalk is going to be a creation of a new asset for us. And we already can't maintain the assets that we have. So why are we making new assets, new infrastructure, adding infrastructure on if we can't even afford to maintain what we have? Again, I know it's
Yeah.
nice. It would be sweet to have a sidewalk. It'd be sweet to
Yeah.
have a sidewalk on Mill Street where all of the wood craftsman workshop people walk up the hill
Yeah.
when they're running the Mill Street 500 down over there. That would be sweet, but
Yeah.
it's just,
It's a good question, Clay. I
it doesn't
think,
always make sense.
yeah, no, and I think that's kind of part of my point, I guess, is that somehow we have to be able to do the things we need to do and the things we want to do at the same, and weigh those things out as a town, So there's a big part of that project, which is stormwater management too. And if you run across that road on Monday after that rainstorm, it's, I wouldn't say it's a soup bowl, but water's not going where it's supposed to, and we've got a lot of people on the river side of it, which are getting a little bit more than they should be. We've got an uphill side, which is sort of holding water in a way it shouldn't be. So, when we first got the bids back, this was 2 years ago, about that project, to try to get it in for the amount that we had in that infrastructure bond, Mike and I had met with Will Gartley and said, well, is there a way that we can sort of just do this part of it without doing the other part of it? Kind of take the sidewalk out, don't have the granite, don't have, and it really wasn't, it didn't cut enough off the price to really say, oh, okay, great, we can do this, one without the other.
So to Clay's point though, current infrastructure that we have needs fixing.
Yep.
To the total of near $390,000 or whatever it is. But yet, we're gonna put a sidewalk, and we can always put a sidewalk in, sort of after the point. So I'm just trying to see if we can fix more roads that you've listed
Yep.
versus,
Maybe Mike can talk about the,
So I guess with what you just said we can always put a sidewalk in, we've looked at that option. If you just left it the way it was now, paved it, we have some major drainage stuff that needs to go on there, some under drains, no matter what.
yeah,
If we put a sidewalk there, Will and I have gone back and forth, and I've tried to beat drainage into where we could do either, and I just can't do it. If the drainage will be in a different location the catch basins with a sidewalk than they would be without one, as funny as that sound. They're in different places, and I've been over it with Will trying to make it work so we could have it laid out, and in 5 years, if we wanted a sidewalk, and Will's like, it's just not gonna work. So
So you
so
got
I've tried to get it so we could do that and look down the road, but it just isn't possible to have the drainage in the right places. While we're talking about the sidewalk, with granite versus cement decking, I also looked at a paved top with a concrete curbing, and that does come out, I think the number was around 90,000 cheaper to go with a paved sidewalk. And like you say, if there wasn't a sidewalk put there, when we pave it, we just need to fix the drainage, which is gonna be a cost, a pretty good
bulk
I
of
guess-
the expense.
I guess my question is, do we need the sidewalk and why do we want it?
Well, I can answer that from way, way back when.
Thank you.
Right now, there's just what they call a fog line for people to walk. Technically, there is a sidewalk there. Initially, the students from the photographic workshop were walking down to one of the halls here and having classes here. So you had people walking up and down that street constantly. And that's why, because they did not, being from out of state, they didn't recognize that the fog line meant that that was a walking area on that side. So they were walking on the wrong side of the street, or both sides of the street, or whatever.
Are they still walking there?
I haven't seen that many. I used to walk my granddaughter until it became so dangerous that you couldn't even get down the street. It's rubble 3 or 4 feet out.
Not much in the way of fog lines.
Yeah, it's not fit to walk on anymore. So you get people walking, facing the traffic, which is what you're supposed to do, but they're ignoring the sidewalk, which by state law you're supposed to use.
So we used to need it, but we might not need it now.
Only if you want to go walking over there.
There's still a lot of
Okay.
foot traffic, and it is the one section that we don't, we've got sidewalks throughout this area, and it was something that was supposed to be part of that infrastructure bond.
And I know things change, but having a little more history than some, I would say there was a great deal of conversation years ago with the board then, and Steve Beveridge, and the consistency with the types of material that we put down, whether it was concrete or asphalt. And I'd have to go back but I believe a lot of it was to go with the concrete.
Yeah.
That's my recollection of Steve's presentation to them, and then the board went along with it because they wanted to have some sort of consistency visual throughout wherever you put the sidewalks.
And that is true. They have tried to stick with granite and concrete throughout the village. At the point where labor, machine costs, I put the option of having, the paved with a concrete curve. And like I say, the number that's here, I believe, is the granite
That's the full.
with concrete. So if you went with a paved sidewalk, it would be 90,000 less than this number.
Is there any type of reflection about the additional, because as you know, if you build it, they will come, or expected to be plowed or cleaned? Is there any included numbers for maintenance in the wintertime?
No.
At this point, that had not. would
Well,
not
but
be
I'm just saying,
going.
that needs to be figured in too, because if it's there, we should take care of it.
Right.
And if David Petty now currently has a contract, is there anything built into future contracts to account for the additional work that will need to be done?
No, there's nothing built in right now. We could certainly sign an addendum to the contract we have,
Well,
but.
it would be good to
but,
know
yeah.
what that number might be too,
Yeah.
just for grins and giggles.
Absolutely.
How long of a piece are we talking about? I'm confused
Oh.
on specifically where.
For some reason, I want to say it's like 1,000 feet.
And this would make a more continual,
It would
safe
give you-
It
pedestrian
would allow you to
passageway.
walk to the town office.
Yeah.
Because I know that's a huge issue I hear a lot about, is to try to get more consistent, safe walkways, pathways for everybody. I happen to be the liaison on the Pathways Committee, so I'm just learning about a lot of this, but,
And I do believe if we're gonna have it, we should maintain it, you know?
oh, yeah.
I wondered about the Pathways Reserve too. We've got $50,000 or $60,000.
That was all spent doing
So there's nothing left in that reserve?
the state project with Camden that went from Quarry Hill to Loyal Biscuit.
1,200 feet, roughly, and that's a
So-
rough.
On a map,
Yep,
are you talking from Summer Street or?
Summer Street up to the top.
Summer
Summer
Street to the town
To the town office, okay,
Yep.
not the bridge, okay. So
Right,
you've got
you
that,
have that
you got that new
sidewalk on
piece of
that.
sidewalk on the right here, so you're talking about continuing that out, okay,
right.
On the other side of the street,
okay.
I guess.
Oh, on the other side of the street though,
The river side of the street.
okay,
Yeah.
there's a crosswalk at Summer Street.
Where the fog line
Right,
is.
where the fog line is, yeah.
Okay,
And the puddles.
Yes, yes. And I mean, the other consideration, and who knows about this, is that at some point, if there ever is a bridge, an extensive bridge construction project, and if the state were to close the bridge, you know, during construction, likely you would see a lot more traffic on Main Street than you do right now.
yeah.
So that was also a
I mean, in a
consideration of mine to be
temporary,
prepared for.
in a temporary position like that, we could also smoke some cones out there
You
and
could.
make a designated walking path just to
Yeah.
increase safety in an abnormal.
But you'd have to pave it first, because right now you cannot walk on that side of the street.
Well, the good news is, if it were not paved, they might drive slower when they have to use that.
If they see you.
I don't.
We've been talking-
Well, that's you.
We've been talking a couple of years, right?
I mean, that is quite a ways from the station to put up a speed trap. so-
Yeah, who knows?
It'll be a long
It's
process
so
of
much more
construction.
fun.
Okay.
So that's the big piece here, and so I think, I've talked about that, I do wanna get to the next page here, cause I think this is not something in the budget, but it was in Mike's proposed budget. And it was in Mike's proposed budget, not because Mike wants to spend a ton of money and thinks it's, you know, it was more of a place to say, we need to account for this somewhere, okay?
Which page
So,
are you on now?
next page, 243,
Oh,
the colors, all the different color codes.
Keep in mind, a lot of this is still taking care of things that we already have, not making new ones.
That's right, that's what,
And we still can't take care of the things we have.
I just want everyone to see the whole picture, and then you guys are the wise elected officials here to make decisions.
The question being, you're gonna go over some stuff here.
Yeah,
The stuff that you're going over, West Street Extension and all these.
Sure.
South Hope Road. 4 years or so ago, maybe 3, we had the person from University of Maine come down and they analyzed everything within the town system.
yeah,
The material that they gave the town is supposed to be on a computer so you can pull it up and when you fix something, you update the piece on the computer. So when you're pulling things off of that list, is that what we're seeing reflected here?
we're not pulling it off that list,
This has all been updated.
yeah.
But the list is still there, and there's a bunch of stuff on that list that was prioritized according to that person. Are those things, some of the things we're seeing?
Maybe some. That system was not a good program and didn't get used a lot, even though, we didn't have we got a lot of good information on having him.
Yeah.
there.
No, everything from drain holes to telephone poles to manhole covers to culverts to the conditions of everything.
I think, the other thing that's happened, and I don't know what the time was, but I know it was a couple years before I got there.
Oh, so-
I know, I'm almost done talking, that's good. That's quite a picture, by the way.
Yeah.
The other thing that's happened is Mother Nature, or climate change, or whatever you want to chalk it up to. This is a problem, and we are facing these storms. We're facing 100-year storms every 3 months or every 2 months, and not only that, we also are seeing some things that are eroding maybe a little bit faster than we thought. So, to look at this list. We all know about Robinson Drive, and that's sort of off the list, and it's its own thing. So I just wanted to make sure it's on here so everyone understands that's one of many, right? So West Street Extension and Chris's Road, which is, a few down from there. Those were two that were part of the storm with FEMA, part of our request for funding, part of our expectation that they would repair and assist them in some shape or form or another. And we got a whole lot of nothing out of them. We got some money, but basically enough to fill a hole. That's basically the money we got from them, okay? West Street Extension floods consistently. I think we all know that. Everyone who's lived here has known that's happened for a billion years. We had received funding before that storm in October of $125,000 from the DEP to assist us in replacing that culvert. So we do have some funds to work towards that issue. But unlike Robinson Drive, we're on the hook for the rest of it to get that culvert working the way it should and upsized.
For the 473.
Exactly, right.
And I just want to say, while we're talking about those culverts, like the West Street Extension, there's not a lot of options of putting back. When we put back, the engineers have guidelines, they have to go full bank width times 102% or whatever it is.
Right.
So that's why these numbers are so large, that the DEP, Army Corps of Engineering, they're telling us what we can put back, and that's why we end up
So-
with these numbers versus a culvert.
And unfortunately, we're in an area with a lot of endangered species, apparently.
Yeah,
And that, we keep
white-tailed
running
bats.
up against that when we try to get permitting for these projects. That was one of the things that really held up our Robinson Drive project, and cutting down trees because of bats.
Right.
So
So-
like, it's bats, it's fish, it's water, wildlife, and they are requiring us to upsize these because of that.
Has there been any, I mean, the roads that the water goes over West Street Extension now is nothing compared to what it was 30 years ago.
Right.
I mean, I've seen it 3 feet across it, but then they put more culverts in. Has there ever been any thought given to raising the road 2 feet?
Yeah, we've,
That's what we're talking.
I mean,
Yes.
that's what this number represents.
Yes.
Not just culverts, it's so the 473 is,
that section, off the top of my head, I don't know the exact length, but, probably 300 feet as you come over the first rise.
Yeah.
That'll come up like 2.5 feet
I mean, that
roughly, and it'll come up to the next driveway.
certainly take care of a lot of that
So you'll
problem.
have wider, higher.
Yeah.
So then the culverts potentially could take care of it. All right.
So
Fingers crossed.
on this list here, I see
Yeah.
Bonnie Street.
Yep.
Is average, but I thought that was just done in the last couple months, and so why is it on an average?
But 23rd,
Yeah, but I think it
oh,
was
even
just
current condition, why is it out?
done in October.
Yeah.
Yeah, eventually, I mean, we're gonna go in and clean back out, because that still does not drain well below.
It's not great now.
Right.
But at some point, that should probably be looked at for a box to upgrade. Right now, I mean, that's nothing but it is on the list for if we could get a grant,
Sure.
and that won't be one of the first, like you said, that's just been done. We've put some, overflow pipes in there, so hopefully we can get 10 years out of that. But in there, if there was a grant, that is something that should get upgraded if we have help in paying for it.
Yeah.
So, quick question. Box culvert versus another culvert, what is the difference?
With anything like fish, for one, according to what it is, where it lies in the stage charts of what swims through it. Sometimes you gotta have a live bottom, sometimes just live bottom being, it's gotta be put back to dirt, no more pipes. And if you could put a pipe there, they want the pipe sunk in the ground, so it becomes probably not big enough.
Okay.
Times you fill the bottom of the pipe to.
Those are like the concrete,
Concrete bottom,
exactly.
basically, so it sits
Okay.
on a footing, so the bottom stays natural for
gotcha,
the
okay.
wildlife.
So, for example, so we talked about West Street, Chris's Road, those were part of FEMA, we should have got the money, didn't get the money. In our sort of look around, and Mike went around to look at all of these, Gurney Street, which is, for those who don't know, Gurney Street, kind of behind Green Thumb there. There's a good sized, stream that comes all the way along 17, parallel to 17, and empties into Chicky. That culvert is in a really bad way right now, and something that really needs to be replaced, I would say imminently. It's not something we want to wait. And all of these at the top here, the ones we have, I would say Meadow is I think we have, it's more of an estimate, but the rest of the top, sort of the pink and above, are all engineered numbers. We've had Will out looking at these with Mike. And so Gurney and Warrenton Street, which is another road that's in the very near future. Those are places where he thinks we may be able to just replace with a larger pipe, which would be obviously far less expensive. Does that, but there's a little bit of things can change very quickly. We didn't know about long-eared bats, 2 months ago, and all of a sudden we had to work real quick to cut a whole bunch of trees because the long-eared bat is gonna be, something. So who knows? But the point is, what we're facing here, just a big picture of this thing, we're facing a lot of crossings that we need to consider, and these are not in the budget, there's not in my budget, but I think we're gonna need a little bit more work on these, but I could see coming back to the board here this fall and suggesting that perhaps we have a bond to tackle a whole bunch of these projects at once. I don't think we have enough information right now to talk detail to detail at the same level with other projects we have. Certainly Robinson Drive, we know that's ready to go. But we need a little bit more work, but the problem exists. And that's really, I think, the point of this conversation, with Clay's point. We've got infrastructure that's failing, and we need to talk about what that is and think about, sort of where we're going. And you can see the timetables on these as, sort of looking ahead. Meadow Street, if you go back to the other one, you don't have to go back, but on that list of roads that need work, and anyone's driven on Meadow Street when you go across 90, it's in a bad way. No different than where Main Street is right now, that middle section of Main Street. But getting into that road without talking about the frequent Beaver Motel that seems to be built behind in the current culvert next to Rockport Diner, we need to probably deal with that issue before we really start talking about the road. So that's when we start talking about this stuff in the fall. That's where these things start piling on top of each other. It's not one issue after another; they're on top of each other.
So
And
is this gonna end up sliding over to the CIP at some point?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cause I don't think I saw it in there this year, right?
That's why, right, because this all came together after, it took us a long time to get to this point of being able to outline all of these crossings. So this is the time to talk about it, and to bring it to light. It's kind of the same thing I've done every year where I tell you about the problem a year ahead of the problem. This is the problem that's coming down the road. And it may look different by the time we have a real firm proposal, but this is the next battle, I guess, for us. So
these are not in the proposed budget right now.
no, we have, Robinson Drive is, like I said, it's its own
Right, that's
thing.
on its own.
But we need to deal with the West Street extension. We have $125,000 from Maine DEP that we need to spend, so we can use that towards the repair. We've been able to put that off, because originally that was gonna be dovetailed with FEMA funds and be able to do the whole project. But when FEMA didn't come through, we lost that attempt. So 2 of these are on this list that we didn't think were going to be, until this fall. We got some bad news, so.
Okay.
So those are.
So we'll
that's-
hear more about those, but not during the budget.
Right, not during the budget, but to see the big picture, I wanted to understand where that is. So I know that's a little bit further into this budget, but that's the sort of the thought process in terms of construction plan. Is there anything else I missed on that, Mike, that,
I don't think so.
okay. All right. Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? This is one I definitely think we'll talk more about through the whole process, but if anybody wants to say anything more at this point.
On all of Public Works or just culverts?
Well, yeah, if people have other questions on other aspects of public works, I guess that's where we are now, John.
Right.
You gave us the big picture, and now we can dive into the proposed budget.
I guess just one of the things I was looking at was the new F-350 with no plow, another lease. It seems like in a lot of departments, not just Public Works, but several departments, we end up adding more and more vehicles, and at some point, again, end up with so much infrastructure that we can't possibly take care of it. So that's part of the capital items under 7260. Down in the 2024 F-350 with no plow,
Yep.
which I think you said was for the mechanic.
Yep. Yep. He's currently driving a 04, 03, which, you know, obviously doesn't have the road miles that a lot of the plow trucks have, but, you know, 20 years old, I'm a little concerned we've had some other issues with repairs that make me concerned, and having driven around the 20-year-old vehicle seems as though we're expecting problems as much as anything. So,
I mean, I guess for me, that's one of those, like, why can't we take our second fire department pickup truck
yeah,
and move that over to highway? Because that would more than get it done. And worst comes to worst, we pay mileage for the
yeah,
EMS firefighter, EMS people back and forth. Because even if we tripled the mileage rate for the town, we would still save money over buying a new lease.
yeah.
On average, how often are vehicles replaced?
Go ahead, yeah.
Well, the 550s, the plow trucks,
Yeah.
they're on like a front line for 5 years. That's what they're on. For front line being every storm, they'll be used. The pickup that we have that plows, that's on a 5-year turnaround. That'll get put into like a second row truck that we use through the summer after 5. The bigger trucks are 12 years, 13 years.
So,
Is that pretty common across other towns of our size and demographics too?
The number of trucks, or
I mean, like the rate in which they are replaced.
it's a good question.
That's been pretty common, those 550s. You start getting into, if you push them to 6, I mean, I've got one that I'm plowing with now that's 6 years. It's still being used every day, but with the frames and the wing, they'll start to crack and break the frames.
just a question on, would it be penny wise to take our Wooded and Kern vehicle, similar to what you have, Mike? I can't imagine it has many miles on it, and replace theirs with this new one and give the mechanic, because I assume the mechanic's not gonna be out plowing, which the Wooded and Kern vehicle does do around its areas. So there again, the Wooded and Kern, that's a more used vehicle, would be newer. And then that, one of theirs, which I can't imagine it's got many miles on. He takes great care of it too,
Right.
by the way.
It's
But then that could be cycled back into
Yep.
something that's used less.
just a fall too. I mean, if the truck we're talking about purchasing isn't gonna have plow or equipment with it, does it have to be a one-ton?
I mean, 3/4 or 1 ton, I mean, we're gonna have a fairly extensive amount of tools in the back, but it could be a
Sure.
3/4, which,
I mean, yeah, it's not much of a price difference then, but.
couple grand, I think,
And fuel skid, right?
right?
Fuel skid on that. That's one thing we haven't done, and we're gonna be putting on, because rather than drive all over town to fuel up back at the,
Right.
bring the fuel to them.
Put a what on? Fuel.
Fuel skid, yeah.
Tank in the
Oh,
back
tank
of
in
the
the back
truck.
of the
Back
truck.
end of it?
Yeah, so they can bring the fuel rather than drive back. Yeah.
I have a general question. Where's money to put in this parking lots that were taken out by the select board? The parking spaces out for the library. The town voted a project that had 14 parking spaces. The select board took 7 of those away. When are we going to get the 7 of them back?
I don't know. I think that there's been a demonstrated need for more parking spaces here. I think in the years that the building's been open, I think people have used the spaces available and then some. The other piece that I would add to that, Helen, is that Mike and I have been looking at that more extensively in terms of drainage. There's some issues in terms of water coming down the hill, coming down Lime Rock, coming down the back slope of a number of properties on Lime Rock and Hughes that we had one storm last summer, 2 summers ago, where
There's a whole creek coming.
it was like the Amazon all of a sudden came and then it was gone. There's some water issues that need to be addressed, and there's a project there that could get handled. It's not in here, but it's. I mean, I see value in it. I don't think there's an issue with that. I think it's just a question of how much can we afford. And if you were to tell me that everyone here said it's a great idea, then I certainly wouldn't argue the point.
Would you consider starting a reserve fund to fund it in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the size of the project is such that you could fund it in 1 year. I mean, I don't know what the last estimates were that we were looking at, but I think it's probably a project that you could accomplish in a singular year. The challenge is not to woe is us, but the challenge was that first chart that we're looking at of how do we get all the projects done that we need to get done? And how do we have enough people to do it? And what I'm seeing is we don't have, whether it's Mother Nature or whether it's deferred maintenance or whether it's whatever it is, we have a lot of more work than we have money or time to do it. And so it's a question of priorities and what we can afford and what we're able to accomplish. Mike and I have been working pretty extensively on a calendar of projects for the rest of the year. Mike's pulled that together, the rest of this fiscal year, and it's tight. I mean, there are things that to all of us would look at. Geez, that's got to get done. We've got one landowner. I won't say who it is or where it is, but nice guy, salt of the earth, has honestly and earnestly come to us. He's got a real problem. There's a real water issue that in some part is the town's doing, in some part. That was an old project that the town had helped with decades ago, and it's time to come back because it's still the town owns it. That owns the problem because we helped to solve it, so you sort of own the problem wherever that is. And we've been talking to him but Mike and I have talked to him, I'd say a half dozen, maybe even a dozen times. And we keep putting him off and keep putting him off. And it's a project that needs to get done. We both look at each other, how are we gonna fit this in? But it's several days, it's a machine, it's gotta be done at the right time of year because how wet it is, we don't want to tear up his lawn. But all I'm saying is, there's a long list of those. My hope is, if this budget were to pass as is, and I'm not saying you all think it's a great idea, but let's just say it passed as is. There is a piece of this budget in how it would work. Part of that, the middle part of Main Street, that part where the sidewalk would be, that would largely be contracted out. So that wouldn't be work that our crews would be working on. There's a lot that we would be doing on the other side of Main Street, the middle section. But there's a lot of work orders that we have built up that we can dig into this summer, this fall, that maybe we can build up get through this backlog that we have. And we started this work order system about 18 months ago. And we have a lot of these projects and we need to clean them up because people, they do say, is this ever gonna get done? Are we ever gonna get through this? we don't have a lot of money to be able to spend it, but we have time, and we have equipment. And if we can throw equipment and time at a problem, and, right, yes,
I mean, we contract out the big part of what we're doing, so. we've got
Exactly.
10 employees.
Right.
Segue into getting things done. What was budgeted for last year that didn't get done?
So the biggest project is Academy, Bay Ridge. So all of Bay Ridge, all the roads in Bay Ridge, they're town-owned. So that's Wellington,
No, that's fine.
you know, all that area. There's some drainage that needs to be done, the circle at the top needs to get raised up, there's a number of different, not huge projects, but just looking at what the timetable that Mike had laid out for it, I wanna say you had 28 days of work.
We do.
Which isn't 28 days, you know, April 1st, that means the April 29th it's done, it means 29 working days of good weather. And that's where we get in trouble, is that, you know, like last year, we had so much rain, it was difficult to get everything done.
So that's this dovetails into my question is,
Yeah.
with what you didn't get done last year, you're gonna be doing it this year,
Yep.
and you're fairly confident what you want to do this year, you'll get done this year?
Yes. Yeah, yes, and that's largely because a good part of it is contracted, that middle section that would allow other projects to take hold. But I don't think that will be the norm, right? I think this year is a bit of an outlier. The only thing I would say that might not be an outlier is that Mechanic Street project. So that was the third item on that list. Mechanic Street, as all of you probably know, there was a substantial main water project on Mechanic Street all summer long. The road was closed at Russell. I mean, it was a big upset in that neighborhood. That project has been something that's been talked about well before I got here, and it's going to take a lot of work. Obviously we have a sidewalk there, we have telephone poles and a sidewalk there. We have people who walk down the middle of the street. We have, you know, people who apparently they're in a race to get to Beauchamp, I don't know. But we've got a whole bunch of things going on there, and obviously, you know, that's a neighborhood that is really busy in the summer and not quite as busy in the winter, but there's still activity there. So we need, that's gonna take some effort, and it's already been talked about, but we need to put aside some engineering and meet with neighbors, make sure, you know, our solution is a good solution. You know, what do you do with the sidewalk? Met with Pathways said, well, maybe you have sort of shared streets concepts. There's some people who say that's a terrible idea, you really need to have a separate parking. So there's a lot that goes into it. I don't have any answers, but we need to hire someone to help us get some answers. So that's that third item on the list. I'm done, yeah.
I want to ask you a very quick question about the library parking spaces.
Mhm.
Are you talking like an extension of the spots that are there now? Okay, that would
Yep.
just continue up further.
Yep.
That was the original plan,
Okay.
all the way up to Anderson's
Yep.
lot line.
So I've got highway questions now that we're done talking about building stuff. Page 240, line 5335, I noticed the culvert request is less. I mean, normally it's been at least 10,000 in years past.
Yep.
And we've spent 30,000. I mean, we're only asking for 3,800 because
Yeah.
we're not gonna replace some to have them on hand, or we're,
A lot of them are moved down as part of the 7605.
The paving.
thank you.
So that road construction paving reserve.
Yeah. All right, so
your privilege taken.
the next one down is, you know, the sand and salt questions. It's been an easy winter. And I don't know how much is left in the shed for sand and or salt. And I know we have a reserve.
Yep.
And I don't know what that is. But is there any reason that some of that reserve might not be used? I mean, you know, you never know what the next winter's gonna bring, but are you gonna need $77,000 to replace a larger, last year you projected you know, that you would spend X amount, but we had a very easy winter, so
Right.
we haven't spent near as much, 21, say 22 at the halfway point. So even if you spent 50 or 60 by the end of the year, you're still full. So I guess where I'm going, is there any chance that some of the reserve can be I'm not saying use it all, but
Yeah.
How much is the
utilize
reserve?
some of it.
But, I'm sorry.
How much is the reserve?
I don't know, it's not on my list.
I know, I can't find,
Well, I know that there's been some put in, because I know we
Yeah.
yeah,
we
no,
did
there
it
is a
for 2
reserve.
years, I think, as a board.
So the answer, my answer on the, what do we do if we had extra funds? We spent 30,000 in culverts and drainage when we budgeted 10. And that was largely because we had a couple projects, Winding Way, we had a number of extra culverts. We had Park Street, which was substantially more than we had anticipated, where we went over budget. And so I'm sort of thinking if we had any savings, I'm trying to say, well, to make it all even, I don't know if it will be, you know, but that, I'm trying to account for the bloodletting that was that line.
Well, you know, in having worn both hats many years, I would just look at a 2,000,008 budget and try to find 50,000 or 5,000 or something, rather than just letting things roll.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that the department head needs a lot of stuff,
right.
but, you know, we're talking about a bond potentially for a sewer system.
Can
We
you
gotta-
answer that question for Mark about the salt sand reserves and whether you need more at this
I
level?
mean, this year has been easy, so, I mean, as far as sand, I've gone through probably, you know, I probably have a third more sand left than I normally would at this point.
In
Yeah,
salt?
I don't know exactly where we are on the salt numbers,
Right.
but.
It was like $15,000 more than what's in here now, is what we've paid for so far.
I guess, I don't know where I'm going, I'm just,
So 21, but another 15
Right.
above the 21.
I mean,
The
I
other
don't like to nickel and dime, but.
Yeah. No, and that's, I think it's a good question. There is, if you were to take, you know, 15, let's say, out of that and put it, and say you could, you know, use that as a place to, you know, say, well, you had a lighter year. The other thing that we're probably gonna, you know, you try to do is buy it as part of this contract, you know, because probably it's gonna be cheaper this year than it would be next. So that's one thing that Mike has done traditionally. In fact, I argued against that idea earlier today, but, you know, fine, you guys are right and I'm wrong, okay?
Well, you know, I mean, you know, like Clay had said earlier, I mean, I'm looking at if you save 15,000 there.
Yep.
And you look back at the streets you gotta pave, you're asking for 6,400 to pave Maple Street. So,
Covered.
you know, you're covering something that
Right.
you'd like to have
Yes,
by reducing something else.
Yep.
And we're still we're chipping away at that list of stuff that needs to be done.
yep.
I had a general question, this one, I guess. On the parking area for the Public Works, in your
Yeah.
explanation, you said you need to complete the building needs assessment, and I think I may have
Yeah.
asked that same question the other day.
Yep.
That's something that we would contract out to somebody to assess, or if we don't, where is it in the budget?
That one isn't. So, a couple of things that happened. Do you want to talk about the work that's been done over there since first, before I get into the building?
Which,
Well, the parking lot, Jimmy sweeping and kind of cleaning things up a bit over there, and where you're at right now.
with the parking lot, as far as paving it, surfacing it, the whole parking lot needs to be taken up. We've run it right almost as far as we can get out of it. It's literally peeling up. But to have paved it sooner, the parking lot already ended up being above the garage, so when it rains, the water runs in the garage. So to put another 1.25 inches over the top of what we had would make things even worse. So that parking lot needs to be pulled out, shaped, and a new base put down, so the water runoff over there isn't as bad as we have now. So that's why it hasn't been just, like surfaced, because it was just gonna throw money away.
It has to be surfaced, it can't just be a quality gravel.
We need to take out some of what's there. It never should have been built as high as they did it.
Sure. But, I mean, do we actually have to pave it, or do we just take it down to grade and let it rip with gravel?
It would be nice to have pavement as far as, in and out of the building and.
So
It'd be
John's-
nice to have my
Right,
driveway paved
right.
too.
You have nice
Yeah.
puddles over there, yeah.
It would be nice to keep the water running away from the building.
Yeah, right, what you could do with grade,
You could.
and not so much asphalt,
Yeah.
you know?
One,
So this, just to clarify, was something you took out of the budget because
Yeah.
you said we want to complete the overall building needs assessment.
Right.
So that's an analysis, I'm assuming, of the public works facility?
Yeah, I think that there's a bigger question that needs to be asked about the building itself. As we were going through this, I don't want to start one thing and then it opens like 100, but, so there's money in this budget that will create a bunk space, okay? This is something that has been talked about probably as long as the building was built, is that there should be a space for our employees, if they're staying overnight, or if they're, we're gonna go out in two, they could sleep in. There's a place for them to go away and get their rest and then come back to work. It's not an uncommon thing to see that in facilities like this, where you ask them to come in at all hours and the like. But when you do that, there sort of was a bit of a, well, if you fix this problem, that creates this problem here, and so it sort of chased the way around the building. Mike and I spent one morning really just, okay, we went here, now we gotta fix this problem. So this problem became, we need to gut our parts room and paint and replace, lighting fixtures and things like that. And that project's just about done. But to know what you need, you gotta know what you have. And so so in a low level, that's a needs assessment of just looking at it eye to eye. But so there's that. But once we get beyond what staff can accomplish, does it make sense to spend $119,000 on a paving area? Or does it make sense to do something, the last effort, when the last time the town really looked at that space, they said, we need to build a larger sand and salt shed, and we're gonna keep the old sand and salt shed, and we're gonna use it for storage. Well, that building's now chock-a-block full, and it's in poor condition. So there's a bigger conversation to be had here. I just didn't feel like $119,000 to fix the paving issue right now was a good idea, but let's look at comprehensively, and
So next year?
next year, we might be talking about something different. Right, yeah, exactly.
Well,
Does
my
that
question was, are you guys doing this in-house at no extra cost, or are
Right.
you hiring somebody?
Yes, we're doing this in-house right now.
Okay.
Yep.
and I promise maybe the last one on this. Page 240, 7207, equipment purchases, and when you look at the explanation, you're buying tire changers and lifts. And I've always, before Mike was there and even afterwards, I suspect, have lobbied for us to do our own oil changes and tire changes for the police department. I'm not talking about technical things, but simple things of oil changes and tire changes. Instead of paying $100 plus in the neighboring town, and you don't have to have somebody leave town, you can drop it up there. And are we gonna be able to do any of that type of work for your police department? And/or, as far as that goes, if you've got a heavy lift, you could change oil on a fire truck.
Right.
We've been having that discussion, the lift that we're looking at,
Yeah.
that gets upgraded.
That's exactly the direction we're going. though.
No, that's good. I mean, if we
Yeah.
can keep,
I think
Looking
you're right
looking
about
at
that.
a computer system through the programs we have to keep track of all the vehicles and that mechanic.
Yep.
Putting all that input into one system.
honest to God, I'm done on that part.
So in the same 240, page
Yep.
240, line 7260, some of these lease payments that drop like 90%.
Right,
That's
the
not just like a
2023.
typo, right? Or that's, Why did they drop 90%? I mean, there's probably a reason in there,
Oh,
just
they
a
didn't-
missing.
Their last four is missing.
Yeah, I mean, there's like 3 of them there, right?
2023 Ford F.
So that's gonna smoke the budget up pretty substantial.
So it should be
Are those typos?
44,000 and,
Typo, or is it just the last year or something like that?
I
or-
think it's their new, so it's
you're talking about
the same way.
The 2023
Yeah.
F-550 4-year truck lease,
Like there's a 0 missing.
the 2024 F-550 with plow 3-year lease,
There you go.
and the 2023 Western Star.
so those numbers that are in the final right column aren't an accurate number?
No, they were all missing a number.
So there we go. There's another 80,000.
It's another 100,000.
Sorry, buddy.
Yeah, I wondered that too. but I was like, okay.
Gotta be accurate.
Well,
no, That's- Good catch, Clay.
I'm all for spending that money, buddy.
I hear you, I hear you.
So now we're 2.878-ish.
I'm waiting to see her update.
You see the number, Mark?
So now we definitely
do?
should cut that sidewalk out.
2.899,
We'll let you,
2.899,
Oh,
615.
shoot.
Yeah,
I
that puts
wish
it
I
right.
was kidding.
So now who are the next groups? Because we're gonna have to dig in.
Sorry, we're out of money.
Cemeteries? Thank you. No.
Okay, so are we done with Public Works?
I think we're done with what we can do now. and we're
What is the
definitely gonna come
updated
back.
number on that, though, with the changes that were
I think
made?
it's the old
Bottom
number,
line,
so
it's
the,
the bottom line.
2899615.
And the percentages, I can't quite,
13.7.
God, you got better vision than I got.
615.
She's got it on here, so I couldn't tell that. I think it looks like,
And,
you know, E, B,
oh, I
I
guess
don't
it's right.
yeah, no, that's what I'm thinking.
We're doing our eye test, you know?
What percentage, is that 11.7?
13.7.
13.7 from 9.8.
Okay. Well, I think we'll,
Say, say the school, you want a copy?
2899615.
615.
Yeah, 6-1, yeah.
13.71.
What page are we on?
this includes a new position.
Yep, that's true.
Well, there's your 80.
Which,
And how does that, when we have like a, I mean, I know parks, we're not done with
parks?
snow removal ever again in the town of Rockport, but we're
Right.
definitely gonna see lower snow years. Is
Yeah.
there any way that we can think
Cut back.
differently about how we approach road plowing? I know when it snows, everybody expects to be able to drive wherever they want, but if we've got a public works
What
budget
page?
that's premised on lots of snow plowing,
271.
271.
and we're not doing lots of snow plowing,
All right. You want
We're
to,
just gonna be doing
Well-
more mowing. So our
Yeah.
contract for mowing's going up.
yeah,
I guess I would say, you know, you still gotta prepare for it. If we're not using the trucks as much, we may be able to get more time out of the trucks.
more
with
life
less
out of
use.
them.
Right.
And I don't want to solve that tonight, I just raised that as a question, because it's.
Right, that,
and
as
we
far,
don't
as,
know.
as far as, you know, the people, I need the people summer, winter, the amount of people I have. As far as dropping the price of plowing, the only way I could see right off quick is that we get more life out of the trucks, because I still need to have the trucks there and,
Right.
because
And
that
maybe
can
not as
change.
much overtime in the winter, so we actually have more crew in the summers.
that, yeah, like, that was, so, when we talked about this, I had one sheet that was, what do we need to plow? How many routes? How many people? And then we flipped it around and we said, how many people do we need to run 2 crews? We had this 5-hour meeting in the Richardson room where we went through everything. And we had 3 staff there. This was part of that staffing needs assessment. We're talking about equipment. We're talking about, what does it take to be Rockport Public Works in 2024? What does it take? What does it take to do it in 2025, 27, whatever?
What does it cost per mile?
Well,
Wow.
well, it depends, I guess. What are you including in the number? I mean, I don't,
Well, the only thing I can relate to is what I know Hope a few years
Yep.
ago, or Lincolnville, actually, I use
Right.
them. If 3-4 years ago, they were spending $5,000 a mile
yeah,
contracting out.
yep.
So that's what I'm wondering is how much we're spending per mile. And then you look at that, and then you say, okay, do we contract a portion of it out to someone? Because it might be cheaper because you don't have the labor, the trucks, the overtime. And
Well-
you still get to have your person in the summertime, but you don't have the maintenance, the truck, the plowing, the overtime.
Well, I think, right, and I guess that's the question, is how many do you need to do each, right? And what I found, we had some personnel issues that sort of cropped up on us pretty quick this winter. And at one point, I said to Mike, can we do without one route? Can we find a way to do it? And, there's, the routes that we have are largely based upon fill up once with sand and salt, go out, do your route, come back. So if you run short of that, right, because you go to, you break up the town 7 ways instead of 8, how inefficient is that? What's the balance? But the thing that kind of flipped my mind about that is the summer work. And that, if someone's out or whatever it might be, but to have a crew, you need people to do traffic, you need people in the truck, you need people operating the equipment. And when you do all that and you start to figure what it takes to run 2 crews, because the only way we're gonna get out of the mess we have in some part is for us to do the work ourselves. We can't pay, someone like JBI or a Farley or a Nitram or somebody like that because, there's a cost plus that we're all gonna have to pay. So we have to somewhat try to do that ourselves because we're paying that labor wage, try to get as much out of those employees as we can, pay them a fair rate, obviously. But then how can we get the maximum out of that? And then ask them to do what their skill level asks, because there are people who work for those companies who are so highly skilled in a machine that they're getting paid far more than we could ever pay. And so in those cases, maybe we contract for those selected issues, but for the bulk of what we do, we need a staff that can handle 2 jobs at once and can,
We need 2 crews for the
2
summer.
crews, yeah, sorry, yeah, 2
So-
crews, yeah.
So that goes back to when I first looked at that. I used
Yep.
everything from the Mount Pleasant side of 17, Tolman Pond side of 17,
Yeah.
down through the
I
green.
just don't want you to look at my back.
Well, no,
back of my
I'm
head.
trying to get close enough to this to keep Jeff happy, but,
I'm gonna take a technical break here. Back to broadcasting.
meanwhile, so where I was going with that is, everything from Mount Pleasant, Tolman Pond, Plants Unlimited, that side of Route 17 was 12 miles.
Yeah.
5,000 a mile,
Yeah.
60,000 a year. So comparing what it would cost for us to own a truck, pay the employee,
Yeah.
the overtime associated. And I'm not saying we necessarily lose the employee, but the employee could jump into one of the 1-tons and they could help somebody else.
Yeah.
And then we would be more efficient in other places, but we don't have the expense of the trucks, the overtime, the personnel.
I mean, I think the same, you're gonna end up with the same. Similar to same argument with mowing, right?
Yeah.
Which is why we ended up contracting mowing.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's all I was,
Uh,
just contracting out was the only point I was trying to see if there's ever any
Yeah.
opportunity to do that, and what we pay per mile versus what
Yeah.
somebody would charge you.
No, I think we have to be creative. I think that's, like Denise is asking, I think you're coming, how do we be creative about, these are incredible costs, right? And how do we get the most bang for the buck for all of our residents? And at the same time, you know, I'm sort of ringing the bell, I mean, like, everything's broken, you know? So sometimes, so how do we do that? And the one thing, I kind of wish we'd recorded it, the staffing needs thing, because I think it was fascinating for me, because one, I'd never worked in a town, I had public works. Somebody's buzzing. Oh, Clay, there you go.
Fire department.
Of
Don't worry
course,
about that.
it's important, obviously. You want to share with the rest of the class? No.
Just
But
go ahead and turn my pager off.
But it was really fascinating because, you know, we had people who would work for some time and you know, probably had never been asked some of these questions, had opinions, you know, and how do we get there? And I was surprised, honestly. I mean, Mike had done his take and he was kind of close with where they ended up, but these were things that hadn't come out in all these budgets that we've done and all these different things, what it's going to take to move the department forward. And a lot of it was equipment. It was things that we do every single day. How do we ditch better? How do we put a culvert in better? How do we, you know, cover over a ditched area with hay better? Those are things that contractors, private contractors, speaking of Hope, right? That's kind of my experience, right? In Hope was we had a private contractor and he was the road commissioner and did the work, but he had some of that equipment. Yet we didn't. For whatever reason, we didn't. And so, you know, that's why this budget looks a little bit different, is that we're like, okay, yeah, we got to change how we're doing this because we've got to be more mobile, more nimble. We used a contractor this year to do some of the ditching for anyone's on Camden Street. Came out phenomenally, you know. He had skills that our crew didn't have, but they were there. They were assisting him. They're working hand in glove with them. So we try to do a little bit of both. Try to do what we're good at and know what we're not good at and try to, try to use contractors when we can, to your point, Mark, so that way we're trying to get the best bang for the buck.
And level of service.
Yeah, and get more service, right.
Okay. More to come on this one.
More to
I think
come.
We'll have to study it, we see the new numbers.
What's next, Parks?
271,
271.
already there. Hard to wait.
So obviously, this is an area where Parks, our Parks and Beautification Committee has a lot of input. So they have submitted their budget. I made only a few adjustments, and really actually just one, which was the general maintenance supplies, which was a reduction of 1,900. It seems as though every year we have this conversation about signs and different things, and I sort of try to reel that back in because, how do we take care of what we have? There were some issues, obviously with the stage that was built over at Mary Lee Park. There's some sighting issues, and it's on our neighbor's property in part. Thank you, Stuart. But there's some maintenance issues that need to be addressed. So just as a way to sort of reduce, but still keep in the spirit of the need to get some items done, I just cut it by 1,900. The only other thing else I would probably just say is on the issue of mowing. So that mowing's out to bid. So we'll have that by the time we come back. So by the time both groups meet on the 20th, whatever the night is that the budget committee meets for their recommendations and the select board meets on April 1st, on their vote, to finalize the budget. We'll have some final numbers, but, you know, there are very few people who do mowing, and I will just say that the contractor who currently has the bid, he and I talked last week, and they look at it as an all or nothing proposition in terms of we handle all services or we handle nothing. So with a number of parks with things like irrigation or gardens or those maintenance issues, the idea of saying, well, we'll just, you know, we could separate it and just put the mowing out and not the rest, then we'd have to find a separate contractor to deal with the rest. And it's complicated, is the best way I can say it. So it's, the only thing else I would add to this about mowing is that, and this covers a number of different departments, including cemeteries, which will be next. There are very few people who do this job, and the spring that I came on board here, we were ending a contractor who, I wouldn't say had gone out of business, but effectively no-showed the job for the town of Rockport. Reliability and consistency is important. And the ability to have a contractor who will do the job and show up when issues arise, it's really important. And there is nothing like the phone calls you received the week before Memorial Day when it has not been mowed sufficiently. I will tell you that. I don't care who you are in this room. You don't want those phone calls. It's not fun. So that having the right person handling that work is important. So, and unfortunately, it comes at an incredible cost. I throw my hat off to the concept of my predecessor to try to find ways to save money in mowing. But I ultimately ended up costing, I think, the town more in the end than what we ever would have saved. So.
I had a question. Line 5310, talk about replacing dead trees and shrubs. Where? What dead trees, what shrubs?
I don't really identify which ones, honestly.
They didn't, not in the description.
I don't think, yeah,
Just in general, he said.
yeah.
Somebody's planning on going out and whacking a few things.
No, I think the comment was, you know, when you have the winter, small things tend to die off.
Yeah.
Just replace some of the boxwoods and whatever is around, was I think their initial comment, if I remember right.
Sounds about right.
Gee, I could have given you a couple of trees last year.
What future adjustments will there be after the mowing responsibility at the old RES site is no longer ours? Is there something that the persons, because there are two people that go mow it,
Yeah.
what can they then do to help offset the $60,000 that we're paying for a private contractor to do now?
I would say the answer is nothing on the 60,000. I think the.
Well, not this year, I'm just saying.
No,
Are you
yeah.
looking ahead to,
In
because
2026.
we did buy two big mowers
Right.
to do projects. so-
Right, and I think issues like the town office, the fire stations, you know, the low impact areas, not a problem. Those are always areas I think that the town can handle. RES was like trying to swallow a whale, like that's a 4-hour mow
Yeah.
to do that. And the folks in buildings and grounds we have doing that are, my estimation, are much better replacing roofs and, you know, replacing stair treads and doing construction work for us. Working on that parts room that needed, you know, a little bit of help. I'd rather have them working on those projects. We're gonna throw them at, some of the parts of the town office, renovation or, you know, whatever, project, that were just exorbitant, frankly, that the contractor had thrown at us. And in, you know, the same time it would have been for the contractor to do it, the cost would have been how much, $115,000 to build out a break room. We're gonna use it for staff time, and plus materials. We're gonna do the same, we would hope to do the same thing with the dais that the select board uses. Unfortunately, it was glued together in such a way that we really can't put Humpty Dumpty back together again. So that won't work, but these are the types of projects, the stairwell going downstairs, which again, really nobody ever saw because people haven't been to the Opera House since, the store, at least for our meetings. But that project was Buildings and Grounds. The kiosks over the picnic tables, that was Buildings and Grounds. So they've done, the amount of money they're saving us is, yeah, the bathrooms at the harbor.
So we don't
right.
want them running a lawnmower.
That's my point. We don't, I think we have projects we can have them do, but I don't think that's the highest and best use of the employees. So I think we'll still use the mowers, we'll still need them. There's still areas that staff will do, but it won't hit this number, Mark.
I had a question about the Walker Park Reserve, because that's for the playground. And my understanding is that in order to turn that into sort of an ADA acceptable playground, it's gonna need a lot more money than we've been reserving. While at the same time, we're gonna be putting in a beautiful new fancy playground over at the RES site. And I don't intend to abandon the Walker Park playground, but I'm not sure we wanna put town money into a nice new upgrade over at Walker Park. And actually, when I go over there, now I don't have little kids, so I might not be looking at it in the right way, but it looks fine. So I just wonder at least about the 12,000 we're putting in the reserve, and then I have a bigger question about the amount that's sitting in that reserve, and whether that's something we can consider accessing.
Yeah.
Because the world's really changed for playgrounds in Rockport with the RES work.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea to look at that area. I mean, all the parks have their sort of own distinct flavor, right? And I think there is a flavor of Walker Park as like a children's park, a kids area, right? You go to the beach, you throw yourself off the merry-go-round, you go to the beach, you run back
Right, and we do
forth.
have the merry-go-round.
Some of us may have done that a few years ago. But do we need to still put $12,000 aside every year? Probably not.
Yeah.
So the only thing I would maybe just suggest is if the board or the recommendation would be to change or to expend what's currently in that fund, it might be to try to use it towards some sort of one-time use, so that way it doesn't create any sort of ongoing costs or.
A budget issue for if we,
Yeah.
this year put it in, and next year, where do we come up with that equivalent
Right.
money?
Like so if you flatline it, let's say we're not gonna put any money in it this year, well, that'd be one thing, but if you're gonna spend it, try to spend it towards a capital cost or something like that. That'd be my only recommendation. Do you know how?
I think we can kind of keep that in mind with all the reserves. If we don't have an earmarked reason to save money, we shouldn't be saving money,
Right.
because we can be spending it
Yeah,
somewhere
Rather than
else.
taxing our
Right.
current taxpayers for
Yeah.
something.
exactly.
I mean, if it's earmarked, if someone has a project that we're planning on doing in 7 years,
Yep.
sure, let's keep saving for it, because it's gonna get spent for that reason, but
Yeah. Good point. I think this is probably all of the recreation and parks, when we know more about what RES will, we know there should be no impact to the budget. But I think next year, probably both department budgets may look a lot different, just because to that point, Denise, of like, okay, well, that's providing this, do we need to do this? Or, how do we sort of shift and shake around what that is? I don't know what those answers are, honestly, as much as anybody else here, but again, when we talk about this next year, just be thinking it could be a different
Yep.
thing.
Good with parks?
you aren't putting a sign in down at Glen Cove, I mean?
I don't think so.
Let's see, now, what's the other name for that?
No, we don't use that name. I know what you're talking about. We don't call it that.
We're gonna need another tech break.
That's the worst $1 we ever spent.
Cemeteries next?
Yes.
I'm
Right,
sorry.
cemeteries are next.
Yes.
Page 343.
And believe it or not, I've only got one question.
Okay.
Not.
Well,
I bet I know what it is.
oh, no.
No?
Do you?
I don't know. Find out.
Well, actually, there's a couple. But
So this department, one thing I just want to bring to mind, Mike has secured our contractor for the project we talked about last year. There's a huge water issue in Seaview Cemetery. We've secured the contractor. I don't know we have a date when they're going to start work, but
We don't, but it should be soon.
should be soon. And that's a big, anybody who's been down there off of even the smallest rainstorm, it's a real problem down there. And we need to get that water out of, yeah. Yeah, right. There's a number of recently, purchased and used graves that have been.
having worked for a funeral home and helped them doing services down there, they literally have to have a pump in the hole within minutes before they lower the casket, because the water is coming in that quick. And that's,
It was swampy before.
yeah, and this is the part that's closer to Chestnut and Russell, but I'm talking about one that's just a little bit further down that's, so, I truly believe that that's a good chance to get rid of that water.
Mike has sort of gotten the scope of it to broaden a little bit, because a lot of the issue is that water coming off of what is the end of Seaview Street. So he's sort of broadened it to sort of accept some of that water and then move it through underground, down and eventually beyond the grave sites. So, and the price we got was a very good price, so we're excited to get that going. So I know there was a lot of interest in that last year, and it hasn't been lost. It's just, you gotta get the contractors on the site, and, they're all busy, so.
And that's in here, you said?
No, it was in
That's-
last
okay.
year.
It's in last
Yes.
year's budget.
Remember, do you remember that last year we
Yes,
talked about
I
that?
remember
So
talking about
it's in this year,
Is it
not the
that
budget we're looking at,
63,000?
but we're working in.
But that
that the
fell under the
63,000?
3641, right? Or no?
Yeah.
3641.
Yeah, that's why it's unspent.
Okay.
Yep.
And then you want another 50,000.
So that's about roads. So, I wanna talk a little bit about the strategy of where we're at. So, and Liz can certainly add to this, but, we had a working group looking at cemetery rules and where we are. That somewhat has, and that works good, and it's sort of sitting on the shelf and ready to go forward to some degree. There's still some work the town attorney needs to do, but it's sort of ready. But, so that's good. The second part, though, is that our records, our maps, and everything else that we have to sort of make sure we have where it is and what it is on the face of the earth is something we need to make sure we have a better record of. And so, Liz has, we've been working with a company called SemSites. They are a company which assists in creating that record, that record keeping and mapping of all these lots and plots we have in all of our cemeteries. I know many people don't know, our Ben, who does all of is our assistant sexton, but he's also someone who works with funeral homes and digs graves and knows where everything is. And then the long list of issues of, that's not where that is, and it says this on the map, but that's not what it says on the face of the earth. It's a little too much for one to be comfortable. And so and Mark will remember, there's been a moratorium on the sale of lots in Seaview. It's due to end in April.
April,
Yeah,
for non-Rockport residents.
for non-Rockport residents. I'm gonna suggest that we continue to hold off until we feel as though we have everything exactly where it is. And that sounds easy, but it's not. Liz is going through this, and they're doing a great job. I think, you know, the company we brought in is doing a great job. But that project is it's been long overdue. And we had a program that was funky. I think, you know, Linda, you know, had tried to work with it, and it was not what she had hoped it was at times. But I think you have a great deal of confidence in what we've
I
gotten
do.
from now. So,
I do.
yeah.
Having used that type of system, sorry, Helen, having used that type of system, I talked to Liz earlier about other things, but that came up, and it's a great tool that somebody from away, if they haven't been around for a while, they can go in and they can find out where Billy Bob is buried. And
It
they don't-
is similar to the Find a Grave.
Yeah,
It's web-based. It will be a while before we will actually have it public-facing. We have a lot of work to do. They just plotted three of our maps, the active cemeteries, and I'll see that next Friday. It's done. And then we'll start inputting what we have in the vault, which is just the plot cards or files. So we'll start updating that and taking a look at it. But like John said, I've been working really close with Ben, the assistant sexton. You know, anything, I always tell Ben, you be careful, anything happens to you. I'm scared. But I do, I have a lot of confidence in them. They've been great to work with, and they've said they've seen a lot worse. I had to send him kind of an old onion skin of Seaview and thought, I don't know how this is gonna go. But he said, no, it was great. Ben and I met with them three or four times over Zoom, and so we'll see the final product next week. But in a few years, it should be public-facing where people can just put in the name and it will take them to that same place, or, you know, pull a map up on their phone and it'll take you right to the plot. But it'll take us a little bit to get there.
Yeah, so that project is probably, that's the biggest project. The second issue is the roads. And so when we were going through the cemetery rules, the one thing that came to light is that we had not identified areas of where we wanted to sell lots. And so what would happen is, you could buy a lot, you know, depending upon what the clerk was doing, but we didn't, in the rules, we didn't define that. And so we really should give that, the board should identify where those are. In the same way you're talking about road, you know, owning roads, right? We were talking about that earlier. So we should sell lots where we want lots to be sold, and we should build roads only where we want lots to be sold. So this $50,000 is an amount that Mike had gotten an estimate on to build out a handful of roads in areas that are really the places we're already selling lots. This isn't like new areas we haven't built out. This is, you go to West Rockport Cemetery and you turn right just before you head down Park Street to Eric's house. There are lots that are sold along that tree line. We don't have a road there. There might have been a road there sometime, but there's no road there right now. So we need that loop. We need the loop in Rockville, where we're selling lots right now. We need that loop built out, because that's what we're doing. We're selling those lots now. Why wouldn't we try to identify those spots, only focus on our infrastructure in those areas, and then be done with that? So that's what this 50,000 is. You can see I'm proposing to use some more money from the trust fund, an amount of 60,000. It's a little more than what we have budgeted.
Why would we,
I don't see any of that here.
Down here on
Yeah, go to
revenue,
revenues.
1,200.
So you go to revenues, R1200,
Okay.
right?
why
So-
is it more advantageous to pull from the trust fund instead of using some of the reserve,
Which reserve?
the cemetery reserve?
Um,
I think we got like
How much do we have?
37,000 in it.
Oh, really? Was it earmarked for the columbarium at Seaview.
Which,
Yeah.
37?
Yeah, I've got some really serious.
I mean, as long as
questions
it's
here.
earmarked, then
Well,
that would be the answer.
If we're
the
gonna do
columbarium, okay, here's the columbarium, to move forward with the columbarium, there's obviously,
We can just go short answer and say it's earmarked for the columbarium.
well, we could, but I just wanna answer the point of like the columbarium. The columbarium is a project that, had started and was really put on hold until some of the work that had happened with the rules sort of finished. So I really don't feel like we move forward with the columbarium until the rules work is done, and that, so I guess in that way, if you want to consider it earmarked for that, that alone, but there was a lot of interest in the columbarium, so it's sort of, I think that conversation's somewhat on hold all the way around until you have some answers.
and that was a 5-year conversation. It's been going on for
Yep.
a
Yeah.
long time,
That's how we were gonna make money.
right?
Well,
Well,
and as to the rules,
Yeah,
I've been on the cemetery committee for a long time. You got rid of it, just as the rules, we finished revising all of the rules. They never got presented to the select board for approval.
right.
But they've been done, and there was supposed to be money put in for the columbarium every year until it got ready. And I've been hearing from Hugh, who's, I currently chair the Maine State Cemetery Preservation Commission. Hugh Lemaster, who is the person we've been working with to do the columbarium, is my vice chair. And he's been asking me, what's going on? Where's the money?
Yeah,
And we're not seeing it. I'm not seeing the rules. The rules have never been
Right,
presented. They
right.
were done
right.
2 or 3 years ago.
They weren't. They weren't done
Oh.
2 or 3 years ago.
Nothing.
They were, because I saw them. I've got a copy.
Helen, we were in a meeting together.
I
We
know.
went through them about 12 months ago.
No.
And we went, and at that point, the conversation had to be brought forward to the town attorney about the consideration of who owns those lots
Right.
and how you decide whether or not those lots can be sold as property or is it a lease. It's more complicated than that. But in the meantime, when we find out that the status of where all the records are
Well,
where
that's
they
the other
are,
thing.
that has to get addressed first.
Linda went through all the records as I talked to her about it, because
Sure.
we spent time talking about a database to put them in.
Yep.
And she said she had to take all of the pieces and put them into files, and I was understand that she finished that. And what I'm hearing from you is that the database that she arranged for apparently isn't working, and so you went and got another database?
I would say that the records that we had were not what we wanted them to be. And I think that, I don't know, I would say that the condition of where they are right now is not in a place where I feel comfortable that we could go forward selling lots and know where everything is.
Okay,
I don't think that necessarily, I don't know that Linda finished. She had a number of projects that she was trying to finish even after she had retired. I don't know that she got to the end of all of them. But I know that what we had left was at a point where it was clear that the program that we had was not meeting the needs of the office or the department. So we needed to do something different. We need to have something that connects map with lot. And, I think that this program is working for the staff we've got. Once that process has been done, and once that the rules are vetted by the town attorney, I do think those will go forward to the board to consider, and we can get back to a more normal conversation. Rockport residents can still buy lots at Seaview today. That hasn't changed. The only thing that's held back is those who are non-Rockport residents from buying Seaview lots. That doesn't give me any heartburn. Everyone in this room can buy a lot at Seaview, and if that's the only thing that's holding up, I'm okay with that.
well, I'm just wondering why you got rid of the cemetery committee. It was the ones that were revising the rules and all of that.
Well,
And we've been sitting there for, I don't know what this meeting is that you had
yeah.
a
So,
month ago.
we didn't have a meeting a month ago, but we
I
had,
mean, like 12 months ago.
yeah, well, so the cemetery committee was ended by the board, I want to say at least 18 months ago.
At least, yes.
And at that point, Linda and I had talked about the idea that we need a working group. We don't need minutes, we don't need agendas for the groups to meet. We needed ability to get the job done. And so it was yourself and Brenda, I think Julie Clement was also there. There might have been one other person. I think there were 5 of us in the room. And, we went through the rules, and I think, there were still some outstanding questions. There were still some things that didn't get addressed. But it's in a format right now where it could be reviewed by the town attorney. But again, until that effort happens with where we are with records, it's selling something we don't know that we necessarily have. And I don't feel comfortable with that. So I don't think that means the work that was done was inappropriate or wrong. I think it was all good work, but I think it needs to be pulled forth at the right time, and that hasn't been yet.
So will you be calling the working group back into a
Could
meeting
we,
at some point?
this isn't really to do with the budget. I mean, I appreciate that there's some concerns about what's happening with cemeteries.
I want to know what happened to the columbarium money.
There's nothing that's happened to columbarium money.
Still there.
Nothing's
In the
been
trust
touched.
fund, you mean? 'Cause
No, the cemetery reserve,
Right, we're
It
not,
doesn't
It
show
says
on
reserve
this,
account, and there's nothing there.
but that's
No, that's
not putting anything
contributing
more.
to it.
Using.
We are not contributing to the reserve.
I'm not sure.
In the reserve, on the reserve page, back on page
Are the current reserve
65,
accounts in the budget?
that shows all the value of the reserves. There's 37 grand in there,
Kept looking in the-
which is what we determined the price of the columbarium at that time was.
Right, which is now closer, it goes up every year.
So page 65 has the reserve account.
the board also discussed
That shows
that when that
37,000.
time comes, Helen, that there would be a request out there, and the columbarium wouldn't be purchased until a certain number of
Right.
niches had been sold. So that's not yet in policy, but that was, just so you keep that in your mind.
Yeah, that's what we
Yeah.
talked about.
Yeah. I just want to make sure, remember that. Yeah,
It's a post office box for
Is it for like
bodies.
ashes?
Cremated bodies.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
so it's not
Granite.
going in the ground.
Okay.
the one we're looking at, yeah.
And those are the trends that the funeral home people that were consulted with told us that people were going towards versus the traditional casket.
It's like a tall
So
granite
that's why there was
monument.
consideration for the columbarium.
Yeah, with multiple,
Right.
so we can sell a bunch of.
I think there were 70 or so, no, I don't know, it might be high.
It was 36.
There's a
36
great
slots.
deal of slots that can be utilized.
I'll go
And
there.
then they have to determine, I don't think you have yet, about how much you're gonna charge per,
Right.
because there's far less maintenance, but yet, in the grand scheme of maintenance. Anyway.
So there's 36 niches, and they cost $36,000. What do you charge? Because you don't have ongoing maintenance to mow around it.
But you still,
But-
they need to be in a nice cemetery that is otherwise well kept up.
Right.
I mean,
So,
and that's,
And we've already been through Seaview and picked out a spot for it.
Well, so I have a question about the cemeteries. Should it pay its own way, or is the idea that this is a gift the town makes to people who choose to?
Well, I don't think we have to take care of any of them technically, I think, except for the veterans, do we?
You're required by state law to take care of veterans' graves.
Right.
You're not
Other-
required
Other than
to take
that,
care of all the other
Yeah,
graves.
and I mean, I just wonder if we should be charging more, or, because we're obviously running quite a deficit in operating the
That was
cemetery.
all
And, that's
discussed,
the
too.
lovely thing about the town, there's a lot of town history, I don't mean to be,
so,
yeah.
People that still exist.
but I agree with you, because the people that, 100 years ago paid $50 for a plot, it costs you $50 a week to mow it now.
Yeah,
So
right.
there needs to be some review of that, and whatever
There was.
information you have
There was a review
can
of
be
it
shared,
years ago.
and increases can be appropriately made.
Do we send out requests for donations? I know that the cemetery where my father is, every year,
Yeah.
they send a little card and they would like you to, slip a little money in there.
yeah.
And it really, and it helps take care of it. Do we
Yeah.
ever ask the descendants of any of these people if they would like to help take care of great-great-great-great-grandmas?
So there used to be a strong prevalence of cemetery associations who would take sort of go above and beyond stone repair and the like. those organizations are falling by the wayside, by and large. The Seaview Cemetery, for example, they had, given their funds back to the town because, they, like so many of these, it's difficult to operate as an association. And I've heard the same interest in Glen Cove, and not everywhere, but that's more of a trend than going the other way. No, we haven't asked for any requests. I know certainly private cemeteries do that. But no.
Well, you've got this new program coming, can you just send out a mailing list?
Well, yeah, I mean, you could reach out. A lot of people, I don't know, would people feel as though I already paid for my plot, why should I have to pay again? It's like those who get the mailing from their college.
But you're not paying for the plot again, you're paying
No, I
for the
know.
upkeep,
Yeah.
And you're,
and the beautification
and you're
of it.
providing them a
Well-
new service with that
You
new
might have paid
software
for
and all that.
perpetual care.
Yeah, that's true.
can actually
You,
find out.
you are right, the perpetual, yeah, can you just say that again, Helen? Just-
Perpetual care, yeah. You can buy perpetual care, which theoretically means the mowing and so on, but a lot of people say,
Take it.
well, the stone has fallen over, the stone is, stuff like that, and they don't understand
And
that that's not covered, and that's part of what the commission will be doing as an educational program.
And-
A lot of the towns don't even understand that they have to care for the veterans' graves. And they don't have the money to do it.
And perpetual care back in someone's mind is forever, perpetual.
Right.
Yeah.
So $50 back 100 years ago isn't going very far.
Well,
No.
yet another, I mean, the budget is such a great opportunity to think about other issues that we should look into.
So-
I don't think tonight we can solve the cemetery problem, but we do spend a lot of money on our
And
cemeteries.
Rockport is far ahead of most other towns that can't mow the lawn, mow the grass, can't
And I've only got two
replace,
things, believe it or not.
I'm sorry.
So when we're talking about mowing,
Yeah,
3630, I'm assuming that
Excuse me.
the same people that mow the parks are the same people that mow the cemeteries.
currently, yeah.
So the reflection of the increase in the parks was 23.6% versus 19.3 in the cemetery.
We didn't use a common factor from place to place. It was,
Okay.
yeah, there wasn't. Because I figured by the time we get to the end of this.
I just didn't know
we'll
whether
have
there
a
might have
firm
been
number.
more things in the parks that are now being
And we
picked
don't
up.
have a number from them yet, right?
Right.
This is what you're just
So
projecting.
this could be,
Could be different.
hopefully, Tom, if you're listening.
I was gonna say, yeah.
And my other
a
thing
bouquet.
is, my other thing is that, and I, believe it or not, in all my driving around and the things I see, I just have neglected to look at the Rockville Cemetery that we were supposed to pile of dirt down
Well-
a couple of years ago.
There's a story with that.
Okay.
The answer is we still haven't sold the property. Remember, that was part of it. And also, we can't use the proceeds from the sale to do anything other than return the amount of costs that we have incurred, and the rest we have to turn back to the prior owner.
I'm talking about the property next to the cemetery.
I
with
know,
the pile
but
of
we
dirt.
were gonna use the money that we had, the proceeds, to hire a contractor to push it over.
But we were also gonna cut the trees ourselves that were in the,
But we never took it on because we never had the money.
all right, so,
Good question,
All right.
but
so
unfortunately, we got bad news.
my other part is, now, I'll tell you, your prior, assistant sexton, which you've got that title.
I know.
So don't ever irritate them.
Oh, boy.
So the prior assistant sexton thought very highly of Ben, and I'll tell you, he's a hell of a catch.
He is.
And he just went out and purchased an excavator. I don't know the size of it, but is there any way that he can be incorporated into stuff that you need to help foster that along more quickly? Because that way he can be there and it helps him, you know what I mean?
Use the time and.
Did I say that out loud?
You said things, I don't know.
You gotta pay somebody.
Are we,
You gotta
are we
pay somebody.
You gotta
networking
pay
here? Is that what's
somebody,
going
and
on?
darn it, if I can take care of the sexton, the assistant sexton a little better, great.
Okay.
It's a good place to go.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, anything else on cemeteries? Eric's given up on moss.
Okay.
It's not moss, it's clover.
Either one would work, it'd save you $99,000.
Like magic.
Okay, next after cemeteries is the library.
Oh, he's still awake
Thank
over
you,
there.
Mike.
257.
And Liz too, thank you.
People like to spend $100,000 on mowing, that's their problem. I'm moving. I am.
I've talked too much, so,
So do I.
yeah.
What'd you say? Can you say that
I'm doing
again?
this to myself.
Oh, I
I'm gonna let
forgot,
Ben
Yeah,
go with
moving
this.
right along.
I forgot to do that.
Okay, Ben. Hey.
I'm letting him go.
Library is page 257.
Do you wanna talk about what's in the budget and,
I was gonna say, what do people want to talk about? We can talk about the library all night. I'm ready.
there's not a lot here, so,
Yeah.
for those who don't know,
Yeah, I mean,
the gray area, those that are colored gray are the items that are reimbursed by the library committee. So while they show up in the budget, those are not places that taxpayers are funding. So, while it looks like, obviously, you go through this long, exhaustive budget, and the total of $589,000, oh dear gosh, what do we do? When you get to the bottom of it, the total to taxpayers is $483,105. And not 100%, but awfully close to it, that's wages and benefits for our employees. So we pay the wages and benefits for the employees. The operations of the library are largely covered by the committee's work. So that endowment is very thankful. So that's,
And I just want to give a huge shout out to the library. What you guys are doing here, the programming, this place is packed almost every night, day in, day out. One of the issues we have is the parking, but that, I think
That's
is-
why they deserve those parking spaces.
Yeah, it's just, I'm not sure it's the budget year for that.
No, once I heard about EMS, I was like, oh, no.
Yeah. Taking one
Might
for
not
the
be my
team.
year for that.
It's just one of many.
Yeah. No, I mean, we built the building and people have showed up. Like, it's worked.
Yeah, and great staff. I
Yeah,
mean, really.
yeah.
I don't have any questions.
Anybody have anything? Not that we made you wait all
No,
this time.
no, it's
but-
fine. It's fine. It's nice to say hi to everybody.
Yeah, yeah, thanks.
Yeah. No, I mean, when I go through this, I normally go through and I have to get my budget approved by the library committee too. So all of the things in gray sort of go through the same process that we're doing now too. And I always try to be really conservative with that because I think I'm borrowing that money from the future. And, you know, I want this to be there for all time, for everybody.
Yeah.
You don't want to move those parking spots over to gray, huh?
You know, I don't think I can. I'd love to, but that's not something that I think people would fundraise for.
Are we putting enough in the elevator maintenance?
that's a good
Keep
question.
going over, and I asked you the
Yeah.
same question last year.
So, we were talking about that tonight. So, and I can't recall what the 1810 specifically, was that the repair or was that the,
Inspection, isn't it?
yeah, the
On
inspection
the-
was part of it.
This one we did.
Wait, today,
4130.
so where we're at, the current budget
Yeah,
for
yeah,
it?
yeah, so we spent 1810.
Yeah, so I mean, there's always, elevators are terrible and I hate having one, first of all.
Yeah, right.
And so, yes, we put in, so what I budget for, the 1685, that is for the maintenance contract that we have with Otis. And then it keeps being things like, oh, we have more licensing with the state, and then it's like, oh, by the way, you also have to have Seacoast here every time that you do any of the inspections for the elevator, because we have to have a phone in the elevator in case, and it has to be like a hardwired phone, because if somebody is in the elevator and they can't make a phone call, I don't even know. It's like, it seemed, and I do apologize, because it seems like there's always something new that I am learning about the elevator. John and I were talking about it earlier, and we are gonna increase that for next year. And we'll have a few years of data now. I mean, some of the increases that were bigger in the last 2 years, one of those was because of the flood that happened.
right,
And we
that's true.
lost, they had to repair like a bunch of it, and that isn't covered under the maintenance contract that we have. So that was an issue that came to that, and elevators are probably the most expensive thing that I have ever encountered in my life. Like, if anybody wants a job, go be an elevator repair person. They make a lot of money.
So Eric, are you asking because it looks like we've gone
Yeah.
over budget this year
Yeah,
on it?
well,
and-
Yeah.
there's always some little reason why we
Exactly.
tend to go over that, so I'm just saying, wouldn't 2,000 be more logical, but.
I mean, I would
I
be.
wouldn't argue with you.
Yeah, I would feel
Yeah.
comfortable with that too. I mean, just so that the numbers work and are
Yep.
correct.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, there's
Yeah,
nothing
I-
gained by underestimating something
No, I
Yeah.
think we say 2,000.
but it's not gray, is it?
So that's,
No.
No, it's town, and I try to be
41,
under in
40.
everything else so that, you know, we
Right,
can still
it evens
absorb
out.
it.
Yep, that's what I figured, you've got,
Yeah,
But I'm looking at your other numbers that aren't gray, and we're hitting those numbers, so
yeah.
unless you save somewhere on labor.
Well, no, we do a little bit from time to time. I mean, right now I'm down a
Opening,
person.
I know, I
Yeah.
saw that.
Yeah, so, you know, for a month, we'll definitely save some money until I can rehire somebody. Yeah, I mean, I always try to come in under budget, and when I do this, I always try to come in as flat as I can.
yep.
Yeah, I know,
No,
it just,
Yeah.
I just know you're gonna have a license or something, or the state will change some rule, and
Yeah.
you'll have to do something, and it will be,
It's super annoying.
yeah.
And they don't do it on our budget cycle either, which is even more annoying.
Right.
On the building reserve for this, what, that money that's going into there, what is the actual reserve account that that's going into?
It's, for the library building itself, and it's to help replace the roof when it's time, repoint the bricks,
But is
seal
that
it.
listed on here? Am I blind? I might be blind.
I might have missed that new one with the, winter salt sand shed, I mean, the winter.
It's not here, I think it's had, I think initially we put in 10 or 15, and then we've done,
No, it's just the 4 that we've done.
oh, I thought the first year we did more than that.
No,
We've
because
just
it was
done
new,
4.
so we said, gosh.
So with this deposit, there would be 12,000. Like, if it
Okay.
stays in the budget through fiscal year 25, there'd be 12,000.
So
Yeah.
with that, you said it's for like building maintenance and stuff, but on here, the line 3606, building repair and maintenance, that got moved to buildings and
So the
grounds.
reserve would be used for the larger ticket
Yeah.
items, like the roof, if we had to replace
Okay.
the elevator,
The HVAC.
repointing and
Yeah.
sealing the bricks, the HVAC system.
Mm-hmm.
Larger projects that aren't something, one, that buildings and grounds could do,
Mm-hmm.
or two, are really just those large expense items.
Yeah, I guess my worry is just that with a building like this, I don't think $4,000 a year is enough.
It's not, it
Oh,
should be
no.
like 10
Yeah, it's
grand a
supposed to
year.
be
Yeah.
10, but
Yeah.
due to the budget constraints for the last 2 years, I said I would only agree to 4. So that's kind of where it ended
So
up.
you're
Yeah, in the CIP, I put in for, I think, $2,000 for the HVAC, the elevator, the roof, and the repointing of the brick. Is there one more? There might be one more. Every year, I put in for $2,000 for those things. And they're gonna have a really long lifespan, but they're gonna be really expensive when we get there.
Yeah, I think that was the year that we had $1.5 million on for the roads. that we-
Yeah.
we Cut back.
Uh-huh.
We put some, but we didn't put it, what was
Yeah, it
requested.
was, I think I got the 10 because that's initially what he had asked, what they had asked for, and I said, yeah, we just can't do 10 there. And it was the first year it was open, so we said we'd front load it a little bit and try to back load it coming up in the next.
I just
you know,
think
over
we
the
should
next
start
5 to
putting
10
more,
years.
more in there, cause
I
at
mean,
some
I-
point, I mean,
Yeah,
the
at some
building's
point it's gonna
only a
matter.
few years old still, but that few years sneaks up on you and then we're gonna, I'd rather have some saved, even if it increases our budget a little bit now. We are specifically earmarking it for maintenance that will happen.
Soften the
I
blow.
will.
Yeah.
yeah.
is all I'm thinking.
Yeah,
Okay. So
I hear you, yeah.
what would be, is 10,000 the right number for that?
10,000 is what when we estimated the cost of those repairs, 10,000 a year would get us to those staged repairs.
So what, just out of curiosity, where do we put that money? Is it in some interest bearing, because it's perfect opportunity? Is it an interest bearing account?
It is. All of our money is in interest bearing.
No, but I mean, okay, yep, good,
Yeah.
So it should be growing, right?
Right.
shouldn't
It
just-
does.
is.
Yeah. And so when we earn interest on our deposit account, our general fund account, and our payroll accounts, all three are different. I take the total interest earned on those three accounts. A portion of it goes to like as offsetting revenue, and a portion of it goes to the allocated reserve accounts that we have. Depending on what the balances are of those, a percentage goes to each reserve account, and then the balance goes as offsetting revenue for the budget.
So we're getting like 5%, the current sort of good interest rate
Yeah,
of 5%.
right.
The only pause I have about 10,000 would be, it's a number that works today, and it's a number that worked when we were calculating it probably 3-4 years ago. I bet the costs of what we have to fix are now, like
Well,
it's probably
sure.
money, right?
But I mean, 10's still in a
Ten's
step
good.
in the right direction.
10's better
Yeah.
than 4.
I'm just saying that
Baby steps.
we may wanna think about looking, when we do capital next year, that may be something we wanna go back and look at our estimates and see where we're headed.
Yeah, and when I do the
You know?
CIP, I think last year I increased them by 3%.
Yeah,
And I think I actually asked for 2,500 in each one,
yeah.
just because, we're getting closer, the lifespan's getting shorter, and the prices are just going up.
That's what
Yeah.
I just wonder if it's 20%,
Yeah,
I don't know, I don't know the answer.
Yeah, I mean, who knows what a new roof's gonna cost in 25 years?
Yeah, right.
It's just, my worry is that we've already had enough trepidation about the library to begin with, so when it comes time for these
Yeah,
repairs,
be ahead of it.
Let's not have a big fight.
people are
Well-
gonna, yeah, if you just kinda, oh, look, we have money for it, instead of, oh, now
Hopefully-
we need to have a big
Yeah.
budget expense for the
Hopefully.
library, then you can at least,
Hopefully, some of our current
Tame that.
bonds might be going out of flavor before you need to ask for any money to do other things. I mean, I don't know how many more years are left on this.
On this bond.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, what was it, 20 years to begin with?
30.
30?
Sure it was.
Yeah, the HVAC system will be the first to go, HVAC and elevator, and like the brick repointing's not a huge thing, but the roof will be big when that happens, and the HVAC system and the elevator will be the most expensive, I think. But these are still probably 10 to 15-year problems, I'm hoping. I mean, I'm not trying to borrow trouble.
I mean, if I were echoing what Clay was saying, I mean, I think if the board could find a way to put another 6 in to make it 10,
I like the
and
sound of
maybe
10 as a
offset it somewhere
Yeah,
else so that we don't.
understand it maybe should even be
you know.
higher, but.
I'd rather shorten the sidewalk over there by 8 inches.
Well, but that, and
Oh,
that's,
well, wait a minute, let me think about that.
Yeah,
but that goes,
I'll build the other 10 inches, 8 inches.
that goes to paving Maple Street versus doing something else because you've
I like
saved,
Okay.
Where the sidewalk ends.
Hey, no kidding. How's that go?
Story why that sidewalk ends in the middle of the block. All right. Anything else on library? Thank you, Ben.
all right, hey, thank you
Good
all,
job,
have a
Ben.
great night.
Yep.
Thanks,
Just
man.
don't actually tell anyone else that
All right,
voted to give
Opera
the
House.
sidewalk, I mean, the library more money.
Clay said,
There's no side for the
I'm just gonna jump right in and say it, because other people have talked about it recently. Has the board given any more consideration into selling the building?
What building?
Are we on
Oh,
the Opera House?
Opera House.
You've already jumped, whoa.
Well, no, I thought
Is that what-
somebody said we were jumping to it. I didn't know. I'm just
Is that what
throwing
we're
it-
going
I'm
to, is the
throwing it
Opera
out
House?
there.
Back here,
I think we're at the Opera House.
I haven't asked, I think.
Oh, okay.
that's not,
Giggity, giggity.
You know, I'll ask.
So,
All right.
just out of curiosity, are we selling the Opera House?
that's not a current plan. But we have to be realistic about
Well, yes.
how we, I mean, I feel like, and John probably can answer this better, but the Opera House, every time we get things up and running, and we get good people, and we've got good shows, and we're starting to generate some revenue, something happens and it's shut for 6 months or a year, or so we had the pandemic, it was shut, just as things were starting to click. And then we had the flood, so then we're shut down again. So I feel like we should at least give it a chance to.
I mean, but part of me though worries that maybe not the only reason, but one of the only reasons it's gotten to where it has to date is because of the people, the specific people that we have getting it there. Not saying we would lose any, but that's a lot of eggs in that basket of, those people will continue to run with that ball.
And there's not even any address in there that I can see of the 300,000 for the sprinkler system that needs to be done. So, I mean, that's an expense that we keep every year. It's
Putting off.
another expense, another expense. It's a great building, but it's another expense.
John, do you want to do any kind of overview of this?
Well, this opening, with this opening act, I mean, real headliner over here. Jeez. No, I mean, so a year ago, the conversation among the board was, well, we need to have a plan, and we need to look at holistically what's going on with the building. So the contractor who was working on that renovate, or that, the insurance claim, had claimed they were gonna come back to us and give us the soup to nuts of what's there. And then they got sold.
Oh, that was Fi was going to help.
Fi
us
was
with
gonna do that. So, we're,
Well, Hayward could, but maybe
yeah, maybe not, I think. They're not,
they're not fun.
I can't discuss.
yeah, right.
I don't do
All I know is,
I can't discuss.
there you go. So all I do know is that we need to have that soup to nuts, right? We gotta have that look of, what do we got here?
Are you talking about the building condition assessment?
I'm talking about the building condition assessment, that's right. This is one area that, so under 7205, I put $50,000 aside to hire someone to soup to nuts look at that building. It may not cost $50,000, and I haven't even gotten quotes on this, but we need to have somebody to give a definitive answer. What are we looking at? What's the damage? What's the wood mites or whatever is in that building? Everybody here should know that answer, so that way you can make a good decision as to what do you do.
I mean, I'm sure there's been a lot of good work done to it to bring it back from the devastating floods.
Yeah.
But at the very least, it's 300,000 to do a sprinkler system, and then what the HVAC system has to be done.
Right.
So that's probably not gonna be cheap. So now you're probably at $500,000 to 600,000.
Yep.
Without touching anything else, so.
Yeah.
People would know that.
How long has it been since Opera been profitable, or has it ever?
Oh, I doubt it.
It's never been profitable.
I don't think it's, yeah.
I mean, and it doesn't necessarily, maybe not need to be profitable, because the town does maybe still need a space to
Yeah.
It's
hold
meeting
events,
space
and all this
Right.
stuff. But if you can zoom out and say, well, our opera house needs work, our town office building needs work, our police
Right.
station needs work, our fire station needs work. Every single building we have needs work. Maybe we have too many buildings. Cause again, we
Yeah.
can't take care of what we have, so at some point,
Right.
maybe we can combine the town office and opera house, get rid of the opera house and add on multi-use space onto the town office. That could be voting and events with parking.
Anyway.
I'd say the thing that concerned, I thought we were gonna have voting over there. That was I thought, once they said no to the public safety building, I thought, oh, they'll let us vote there. The fact that the Secretary of State's office said, oh, no, you should go over here. This is the space, surprised me, because I look at that wide open space, that's a great spot to vote, and we've had town meetings there, and so there's something. Yeah, ADA. was the
So
issue.
and on that note, because I heard that and I thought
Yeah.
about it, and I see when Camden enters their building,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And they use the fire station, and there's
Well, no
not,
longer. They go upstairs to the Opera House
oh,
now.
perfect.
Go figure.
Two flights of stairs.
2 flights of stairs.
I think
or the elevator.
Oh, was it a one-time? I thought they were
Yeah,
doing.
'cause they don't put the
Oh,
fire trucks
that's
out
right,
in
it's fire
March.
trucks, you're right, that's right, sorry, yeah, one-off. But if they have it cold November, where are they gonna go?
Well, if the rabbit hadn't stopped to, anyway.
Anyway,
So, question, Opera House.
yeah,
Of the wages, what's the breakdown?
So we have two rental agents, one that focuses on town-produced events, and then one that focuses on renting the facility to people that want to use it for their private events, private or public events that they're either selling tickets for or doing the whole thing from start to finish themselves. And then we have 4 technicians that are available for those events. We do require anybody that either rents or uses the facility to use one of our equipment technicians. So that is in there. That is a big chunk of what it is. And that has 100% offsetting revenue in it because when we rent the facility, we are requiring the renter to pay the cost of whatever it is to have that tech there. And then we have, I hate to call him just an event attendant because he's way more than that. But we have an event attendant that is in that budget as well. And he not only attends the event, but he does all the cleaning at the Opera House.
he's one of a kind.
He sure is, and he absolutely loves what he's doing, and he is incredibly motivated. And recently, just steam cleaned all of our padded chairs, the ones that sit on the main floor, and then the ones that are up in the balcony. And the ones in the balcony, for a long time, we thought those really just needed to be replaced. I think they just need to be repadded, and they look incredible now that he's cleaned them. Like, it looks completely different up there,
So,
and he did that.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Did I hear you right, you said that the wages are 100% offset?
The video tech wages are.
Okay, so,
Or 1057, which is the 39,000.
So that's part of my question. I'm looking at a 61.3% increase.
yeah,
And in the department head memos, cost of living increases, part-time staff, wage increases, technical staff.
So between the 2 rental agents that we have, they are both budgeted for 20 hours a week. There are no benefits that go along with those because they are part-time positions. The event attendant is budgeted at 20 hours a week. And then our 4 video techs is the 39,000 difference. Correct. Yep.
So you don't have to do any more now?
so the 4 techs are the 39,000,
Correct.
and everybody else is.
The other 3 is the rest. Yep.
So you used to get a stipend for doing
It's
work?
not in here.
Okay, that's what I was getting to, because I was trying to
It's just
figure
those
out the,
employees. It's just those employees.
okay. So I'm just trying to figure out the increase. There's no more personnel added?
No, and a lot of those employees are getting a cost of living adjustment plus a step increase according to the personnel policy, and that's just,
Are we taking care of Jeff?
Jeff is one of the 4 techs that we have.
And yes, we take care of Jeff.
When he bills us.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean,
Hint, hint.
I'm okay with the rest of it. This is just me, I don't know what you guys, but I'm okay with the rest of it. I just think that the sooner you can get a complete analysis, and then when you get the numbers back, throw them out there, because I'm thinking there's gonna be $500,000-$600,000 easily just in 2 things for the building.
I do think that it's important to know that there's a real possibility when they do our spring testing, our sprinkler system's gonna fail.
Right.
They have to charge the system and leave it charged for 48 hours, and then they come back and pressure test it, and there's no way that system can stay charged with water for 48 hours. That's how we ended up with the leak that we had last time.
And there's no guarantee that they'll renew our permit after the end of the year, if I remember correctly.
We do have options with the state fire marshal's office to have a fire warden watch person during events, if the sprinkler system fails, but, I mean,
Could that be one of our new EMS people?
Yes.
it
Good
could.
idea.
Yeah, right up until they get a call during
Right.
that time.
True.
So, I mean, there's a real possibility that that's gonna happen when they do that testing in the spring. And we know based on, I mean, that is one of the estimates that FI did provide us before they left, and their estimate was 310,000. So we know that's a real possibility of an expense that we're gonna have going forward, even just to sprinkle the building.
You still need to change the water line.
Right,
Right.
because they never, they used an old rusted water line coming into the building, which has caused the corrosion to happen more rapidly in the sprinkler lines.
Okay.
So when do they test the system?
This spring. Once it stays above freezing consistently is when they'll do it. They can't charge the system if it's gonna be
Right.
below freezing.
Yeah.
And if that were to happen, what would we do with this budget? I think the answer is we hire someone right away to figure out, we reallocate the money and we hire and try to get to the bottom of what it is we need and what we can do ASAP, and then it comes back before you know?
So,
Have there really been considerations of selling it? I mean, or is that just?
Well, last year,
No,
right?
I mean,
You brought it up
I
last
am
year.
hoping it gets sold.
Oh.
Yeah,
okay.
you brought it up last year too, the budget, didn't you?
I know Jim Annis brought
Jimmy
it up
did,
in
yeah.
the first 2 years, probably the first year of his.
Yeah.
To like a nonprofit group or somebody that would allow
Anybody.
functions to.
I mean-
Preferably not.
No,
Or just,
I'd rather make some tax money on it.
Yeah.
okay.
That was the
Oh,
thought.
okay.
but to Clay's point, and just to kind of fill that out, I mean, there are issues at the public safety building, there are issues, there are space needs at the town office, where we're moving, elections here, we're doing, so there's a lot of plates we're trying to spin to keep going here, and,
I mean, I think a
Can
lot of
you
it
move
too,
on?
like, are we just trying to provide a space for the town to be able to rent? We're not really in a rental business. We're kind of good at running a town, not so much trying to
Well,
rent
or
out a
events-
space, you know?
events that bring the town together. I mean.
Agreed, sure, yeah, but most of the personnel, the time that we're paying people to work is not for town events. It's for events that could maybe generate some money. So-
Well, but the town residents attend, I mean, if you go to those events, there's a wonderful community feel of people who are there. I mean, there's a sort of an intangible that I think is hard to put a price on. We have to be
Sure, but
businesslike
let's say
and-
we still have another place to have events. Maybe it's not there, maybe it's a multi-use space added onto the town office, you know? Does it have to be down here where there maybe isn't the best parking, where it's gonna be hard to sustain it? We already have one sprinkler system in the town office that's maintained.
Yeah.
When you big picture this, for me at least, this is a very easy spot to target, because it's not necessarily, the most effective use of the space.
I'm curious, because I know certain events happen there, but I've never really paid that much attention. But I'd like to, at some point, see a calendar maybe of what has been happening, what type of events.
Like,
What has been happening,
Huh?
what has been happening is that we see big increases because nothing happened there for a year and a half. Nothing happened there for 2.5 years. Okay, that aside. For many people, both in town and out of town, that is the soul of Rockport. Screw the harbor, all this other stuff. The Rockport Opera House is history, is an opera house. It's not a multifunction room. If we were just worried about town events, absolutely dump it. Turn it into a rich person's condominium, well, not condominium, but playground. And we've seen that happen with other buildings that are not nearly as historical and as integral in the downtown, Harbor Village area of Rockport. That building, one of the reasons that it's in such trouble physically and financially is that it's an old building, but it's a beautiful old building with really good bones and with a dedicated group of people to shepherd it. Now, and the only reason I'm not over there behind the gear freaking out is that every year this comes up and every year the right thing happens, which is that we keep it and we keep investing in it. And what our challenge is and what we have a good team for now is to create more town-produced events that have history, a week of this, a festival of that, on and on and on, that, people say Rockport is a new destination for them, or Rockport is still a destination for them. So, we'll mourn the loss of a bunch of activities from Bay Chamber concerts, but we're, the two people that we have on the promotional end of things are really go-getters, and they're bringing people in, and now we have the tremendous contra dance group from Bangor coming down here they rotate, and normally they go to a place every 8 months. We got them back 6 weeks later, and that's happening on Saturday. Go down and take a look. Sorry, that's happened Friday, as in tomorrow. And then Saturday is a group of very tremendously talented musicians, and who have many other aspects to their entertainment. So, to date, the people of Rockport have done the right thing. Absolutely scrutinize it, make it more efficient, etc. But it's not a multifunction room. It's an opera house that has a lot of life.
That's kind of where my thought was going, is that there's no other place that I'm envisioning where you could have a concert or an event in a concert hall or entertainment venue.
And yes, like, for instance, a library, do we need a library in each of the three towns that nestle together? Rockport Opera House is a very different beast from Camden Opera House, is a very different beast from Watts Hall, et cetera, Watts Hall being down in Thomaston. And we are tremendously flexible. The fact that one night, in a 3-week period, you have a very, very avant-garde dance group that had 20 musicians on the floor. Excuse me, I don't know why I'm getting, it's my time of the month. With tremendous avant-garde dance and music, and then a week later, and that has a half house, they're in the house with chairs, going this way, and then you have a concert dance where all the chairs are taken out on a flat level, brand new floor, and then the next day you're back to 275 chairs to sit down and have a concert experience with that. So it's very, very flexible. You can't do that at the Camden Opera House.
And then downstairs, I realized we'll be going back there someday.
Someday.
We shall arrive someday.
We'll go back
But
to
anyway,
Jeff's
thank you
room.
for letting me talk.
And I don't take that lightly. It's always been a big part of Rockport for the time I've been around. But I think we need to really look at trying to find a benefactor or someone to come in and donate big money, because, I mean, if you're gonna ask the taxpayers of Rockport, do you wanna put up $500,000 or $600,000 to keep it together for another year or 2 or 5? Or fix the sidewalk another 80
Yeah, it could be some sort of public-private partnership
Yeah, I
or
mean, there's gotta
something
be
where-
something that could be done. I mean, because it is a nice building, but you keep throwing good money after,
Is it
bad
a
money after
landmark?
good or whatever.
Is it a
Yeah.
landmark building?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That ties hands on some things, right?
Yeah, it hasn't gotten in the way of what we needed to
Okay,
do,
but-
but it definitely is, I mean, I would echo Jeff's, it is part of the soul of
I
Rockport.
see it as a drawing point, just as I walk by or drive by or whatever, but,
Keep,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
So, the building assessment makes all sorts of sense, and we'll go from there.
We'll get somebody to bankroll the whole place
That's it.
and renovate it.
Yeah, well,
Knock
once,
on my door, will ya?
Okay. I don't know anybody personally, but,
anything else on the Opera House? Okay, next is debt special assessments.
325.
Goes on for
This is sort of,
Obviously, the big change here is the West Rockport Fire Station. That's,
And it's
coming
an
online.
interest-only payment this year. Next year, we'll have interest and debt.
Right on target.
and we got the $1 million from the
We
most
did.
generous Lesher Family
We
Foundation.
got it yesterday.
Yeah, so that,
Big deal.
Absolutely wonderful.
that'll offset the bond, right?
Yeah, it just means we'll borrow $1 million less.
We're right back on schedule, you know?
Too bad we didn't know about,
Exactly.
too bad we didn't know about the $1 million until after we got the bids back.
Yeah, but we haven't issued the bond yet, so we'll just issue the bond for $1 million.
For $1 million less. So this interest payment is gonna be interest-only payment.
It will be, so the payments are due every November. Your first payment with the bond bank is always an interest-only payment. So this will be November of 2024, and then November of 2025, we'll have an interest and debt payment.
So it'll be less than the
Principal payment.
102,000 because we're borrowing $1 million less.
So what do you?
No, this was based on us only borrowing 2 point, or whatever it is.
Okay.
So if we're only borrowing 2.7, and I don't say that lightly, 2.7, but the 1 million is where during that time? Is that growing
Right off
any,
the top.
growing any interest anywhere? Is that?
Yeah, so we have a project account for the West Rockport Fire Station that earns the same interest as the rest of our deposit accounts.
4 or 5%?
It's sitting there.
So, 600,000, so
Could
I'm
start
just,
to add up.
yeah, I'm just, we can tap into that over time, yearly. And my other crystal ball would be to, I don't wanna, I know there'll be grants and other monies available for wastewater, and I know that will come up down the road, later
Next.
tonight.
It's next.
But what type of payment might there be
Well, sanitation.
for that money? We don't know what we're gonna be borrowing, so we can't really know, but
And it won't be, it won't be in our municipal budget, it'll be in the
Right.
No, no.
wastewater budget.
Right, but a lot of things that I've heard during the meetings and watched, I don't know as it's always been talked about, is that the money that we currently pay, 350 or whatever it is to Camden and 240 to Rockland.
No,
So we've got almost $600,000 that we're paying out that we won't have to pay out
right, that will be.
at some point in
paying
time.
ourselves.
So any future payment towards that system might be a wash. So, anyway, sorry, I digress.
No, good point. Okay, not much we can do about this. Any questions about it?
No, we owe it.
Special assessments is $355.
Which,
Sorry.
Sanitation, or
So
we
special
don't-
Page
assessments,
Debt and
355.
special assessments are in the same box.
and this is really just tax billing and then a whole bunch of revenues. Which, really the only thing of note here are 2 items. One is the state revenue sharing, projected 670, which is a substantial increase from the current fiscal year. If you go on the state's website, it's a little bit higher than that, but I don't trust the state for projections at all. So being conservatively under that number, is a good thing. And then,
And so the 500,000 last year.
Yep.
We've gotten 296 so far.
Yep.
And we get presumably more.
yeah,
This is technically, because they issue the payments the 15th of the month following, so this is really just through November.
Okay. So we'll be under 500 than last
Right.
year. So
yeah.
Fund balance above. Okay, great.
absolutely. The biggest, the one that usually gets the most talk is the use of unassigned fund balance. So in my budget, I put in 380 to basically level set that use of fund balance. It always gets discussed. The issue obviously of using less means that you've sort of created a deficit from year over year, which thus increases the the increase, the taxpayers. The challenge, of course, is trying to make sure, one, you have enough in your fund balance, so that way you can operate. This 380 is rough, we haven't had our audit yet for the fiscal year end of last June 30, but is roughly attributable to what we would be putting back in, what we project. So we're not harming our position in any way in our fund balance, and it level sets where we are. The challenge, and we heard it from Peter Orm the other night, is that the challenge of using this is it can in some cases create an unrealistic expectation of what your voters or what your taxpayers are funding. And so you're sort of juicing your numbers by $380,000. If you were to, in an ideal world, you'd use zero, and you would only use those fund balance, that money from the fund balance to pay for capital needs. So, for example, rather than borrowing to buy a fire truck for $380,000, we'd pay it in cash. An ideal world. But to get to that point means we have to cut $380,000 in revenue, which is not gonna be easy in a budget this year. I don't think it's ever gonna get easy. No, but I'd like us to edge down. If we didn't have a year where we are creating, we have an EMS department and all that, I would like us to get this down, to try to chip this back down to zero or closer to zero than 380. I'd like us to not use that and instead use what we're using for the fund balance to only buy one-offs, but we're not there right now.
But I mean, even looking at like what our culverts are gonna be for next year.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's just not
point.
use the unassigned fund balance and then boom, we got cash for them next
You
year.
could.
Or at least one of them.
You could. I mean, that just means your increase, you gotta figure out where the 380, but you're right. I'd like to get there. I really would.
What, yeah.
I'm
See
not
now,
against it.
where did I hear that? So, I'd ask Megan, I'm just gonna do it again. Last 2 years, 21 and 22's audited balance, how much was that? And then I'm gonna go on to this year's, which it seems to me, whatever agreement we had with somebody ages ago, that they had their numbers to us by the end of December.
Yeah.
And we've never held
gotten that.
anybody's feet to their fire to do it. I mean,
Quite honestly, we're lucky we even have an auditor. There's a lot of municipalities in the state that can't even find one to come do their audit. School districts and municipalities alike. During COVID, the two largest auditing firms in Maine shut their doors.
it's crazy.
And
I mean,
they just can't find people to do it. So in our case, our auditor is backlogged and will be here in April to do our audit for the previous fiscal year.
when's the next contract for that?
I mean, we could theoretically put it out to bid, but
No, I'm just,
you
I
would
thought,
risk
We're a year to year.
irritating the auditor that we have and not being able to find another one.
I don't think we get a different response is the problem.
could I negotiate for you? I wouldn't irritate him.
This is what you're doing.
This is where we go.
It's June 30, it's July 1, come on.
No, I get it.
So our fund balance was 18.8% of our expenditures.
And our policy
year?
is,
It
it was.
I think
Was 12.
20.
Yeah, 20.
So the policy was 15, remember this? And we said the idea was 25. And the board said, all right, 20's the middle, maybe someday we'll get to 25, but we're not gonna do it this year. Cause we were already in that ballpark, I think, at that point.
Right.
So we're still below policy right now in terms of what we
Well-
can use.
But we're at 40, how many days? 42? And we were aiming towards 90 days.
Yeah, right, that's it.
And the charter or the policy says 12.
20.
Well, 1/12.
20%.
Yeah, so, anyway.
Okay, Anything else on
That's
this
all.
category?
Yep,
All
that's
right,
it.
sanitation.
249.
Can hardly wait. for
Eric,
this
you
one.
ready?
My number didn't change.
It went down.
I know,
That's
I
how good
noticed
you
that.
are.
Hey,
It
you
only
know,
One
went-
year,
a
not
decrease
6
is
months.
a decrease.
What, 6 months
It
as
only
chair?
went down a tiny, tiny bit because of the valuation of Camden over Rockford.
So that's
That
what
was,
went down.
the actual number did not change. The splits changed.
Well, we'll take it. We'll take it.
But it wasn't much. It was only like $100 or something, wasn't it?
Well, I'd like to see those numbers in quote, you know.
So any questions on this one, Midcoast Solid Waste? Okay,
You mean, oh, I thought we were at sanitation.
we are.
We are.
Oh, you said
249.
Midcoast Sanit.
I was,
It's a
I was-
polite word for
all right.
Midcoast Solid
All right.
Waste.
Yeah.
Dump.
The dump.
The dump.
Dump. It's the dump.
So where did we go? So we came down about $1,700, right?
Yep,
Yeah.
Yeah, 1712.
Yep.
down.
But
is
again,
good.
technically, it's just due to
It's based on the
valuations.
valuations. That's okay.
So we held the line on the budget at the Midcoast Solid Waste
Well done.
we adjusted the bag fee.
the year before it.
Yeah.
We did it in June of last year. Probably next year they will, maybe,
A couple of years, yeah.
because otherwise the wages will. You know, there's still the hope of getting its own wastewater treatment, which would really reduce the budget.
Or we build ours big enough.
Either
Just-
or,
Just in case, we have somebody that might want to join us.
We could
I
use
mean,
some.
you know,
yeah.
Use some
Well, it's,
another user.
we're just waiting on, the state to give us the green light to continue the project, so. You know, continue investigating whether it's doable. So, we should know that by next week.
Yeah,
I
Alice
hope.
texted me that there's some new technology, some guy she's talking to has got all sorts of great ideas.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Midcoast Solid Waste.
So, you know, if that happens, then the number can come down considerably because we'll be dropping off a couple $100,000 in sewer fees. It would go from like 300,000 down to about 50, once it's built out. But the build out will come out of, the idea is it'll come out of the closure fund, because it's technically a closure type item. So, and that would also reduce the perpetual ongoing expense that the towns would incur to maintain that, because that water has to be pumped forever.
we own it.
Yeah. So if we can get it down to $50,000 to $70,000 a year compared to whatever it would end up being going to a major plant, you know, that's, you know,
That'll save
that would be, you know, you're talking like 12,000 to 15,000 a year per town over instead of 170, 160 something, so.
Yeah.
Midco Solid Waste is in effect in a very similar spot that the town of Rockport is in terms of Camden's
Yeah.
wastewater.
Water treatment.
Because
I mean, it's-
that's a lot of our budget is that.
Yeah,
It really sucks.
Yeah.
quarries filled with water, imagine that. right?
Yeah, and all the rain does not help.
No,
No,
definitely not.
that's that much more to
You
find
know,
out on
we're
that.
trying to mitigate it somewhat by reducing that north quarry level. The state did say we could pump stormwater, pump that out as stormwater, so that'll reduce the pressure of the backflow of the water,
Oh, that's good.
which means we aren't pumping as much, hopefully. That's the idea.
Where does it go when you pump it out?
It's stormwater, so it's gonna just drain off like a storm drain, so. Yeah, basically,
Camden Harbor.
because it's just water.
It's water. It's
Yeah,
silly that it's going to a sewage treatment facility in
Yeah.
the first place.
well,
Okay, well,
that's that.
thank you, Eric, for
Good job, Eric.
Page
saving us
$335.
$1,700. Okay.
$1,700, but hey,
Hey, it's the only one, it's the only one so far that's been,
down.
Oh, well, here's a really exciting one. This is county and the schools. Talk about having no control over this. I don't know how much time we spend on it, but 335.
Well, probably dispatch deserves
Yeah.
at least a second of.
Yeah, some updates on that.
Yeah, so, for those of you who don't know, the town withheld funds for the county dispatch after the service nearly went, under, I guess. In August and September, they were able to rescue somewhat, the feet from the fire and keep the service going, but they had to shut off the 911 service. So right now, the Waldo County Communication Center is getting all the 911 calls for Knox County and then rerouting them back to Knox County's dispatchers.
So were we paying them for a 911 service?
Knox County's paying them,
Oh, okay.
So
But-
yeah, we're paying them.
but we're paying them, right. We're paying Paul the, yeah,
Peter to Paul.
yeah, right, and we're getting, yeah.
And then are we also paying money as Knox County tries to put together its 911 service? So they've got employees who aren't yet officially, I mean, we're paying them, but they're not really,
Well, yeah,
In
but
the upcoming budget.
we'll see if that works. City of Rockland is working to
Yeah, no.
potentially take over all of the county service and manage it. And so in effect, the last thing I heard is really, instead of we write our check to Knox County for dispatch, we would write our check to the City of Rockland. That's sort of, what little I know at this point is that's what would be discussed. It's, yeah, right, they'd go back to the way it was. So
they get cross streets, correct?
imagine that.
I know, right?
I know, it's pretty bad.
What's the difference between the E911 and the dispatch?
Let me see if I can show you on here. If you go to, is it this one? 339. So there's two different numbers here. So if you look at, so we're the blue column, there's the 102 for 911 services, which is the second column. And then if you look at I guess that next batch of columns for law enforcement, EMS, and fire, that's the remainder of, that's the two different categories, 911 and sort of types of service of how they create the funding formula to fund the dispatch center. Well,
One of it's based on call volume and the other one's based solely on population. So
Yeah.
that's like, when you look across, like the law enforcement has 43,000 allocated to it, because obviously our law enforcement officers are taking a lot more calls than our firefighters are, or using dispatch more.
Right.
So they base it on your call volume, that middle section.
Will that shift as we get our own EMS system?
Not really, because they're dispatching northeast now.
so the 4803 is reflecting the northeast, dispatch to northeast.
Right, yeah.
No,
Well, no, it's that, sorry, I had to bring it up here now. I
EMS
turned it.
dispatch would be the same.
Yeah, the
What's
EMS
Right,
dispatch.
it's
It'd be
just
the
a
same,
different
it's just
Right.
entity called.
Who we're calling is
Rockport.
different.
Right.
It's just about
Same numbers, just
Right.
who you gonna call? Ghostbusters. I would say, so this is just one place, where I would just, since we're here and we're all amongst friends, this was probably the biggest, failure of regional government that I've ever seen in 20-plus years of doing this, in the municipal level. There's no reason that service ever should have gone the way it did. It was completely embarrassing, and
With lots of people warning them ahead of time that they were in
Absolute
trouble,
years.
they needed to do.
fire chiefs, police chiefs, everybody saying this shouldn't work the way it does. Fix it, fix it, fix it, and it didn't.
Their own payroll records should have shown a problem.
Right, and so this is something that, when you just sit back and you're like, what is it we're doing all this for? And you can't even get the service, you pick up the phone and say there's a problem, help. When you can't even get that to work, everything else,
Right.
I
We
mean,
spend money on the police, the
Right.
fire, all the things that are ready to respond.
What are we
But
doing?
the phone call doesn't work.
for example, I know when you got in your accident, who'd you call?
Fucking Waldo, excuse me.
Yes,
Waldo.
ma'am.
Right, right.
And had them transfer me to Knox.
Right, because
Testing.
how crazy is that, right? That you had to like go out of the system.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, scary situation, and I don't want to bring that up for you. I don't mean to, but I'm just saying like we all have like the basis of what we're doing here. If we can't call 911 and get our service, forget
So,
it. You know,
well-
and I was just gonna
Yeah.
say that to me was a sign when we talk about EMS, we talk about anything else. It's better to be a day early on fixing something than a day late. And I think they were a day late in getting there. And, you know, to me, that was the wake-up call for me to say, all right, we gotta be aggressive. You know, we gotta be making sure we don't fail the people who live in our town. So, you know, I think, you know, they're trying to put it together. I hope it does, all that, but, there was a lot of people trying to make that thing go. Different cities, different managers, different chiefs. And there's elections for the county commission and, you know, people will get involved and I hope they do because that system, whatever it is, should work better than it did.
Right, and they're under an interim administrator now.
Right.
They've already paid off the old one, so we're all out that money. And,
You know, it's the same, I mean, for many years it worked, and it worked well. It's like anything. It's like owning town buildings that you don't take care
You
of.
gotta stay on it.
Eventually, it comes back and bites you in the ass. So here we are. We know it's a problem. We move forward. I don't see any great deal of positive coming from sitting here and
yeah.
belittling the county government. They're gonna try to
No,
fix things.
it's more a question of, they didn't, 30,000-foot level for me, but they didn't want to pay the wages that were really necessary to pay to staff
Right.
that center.
And they're working on that,
And that's hard,
but.
because you're
but-
trying to keep your budgets under control, you don't really want to pay those wages, and,
And-
you know, we're going to be talking
And
about
that
some of
goes
that
back
here.
to like us not fixing buildings and things.
Right.
The same could be said of us for not doing what
Yeah,
needs
we're
to be
not
done.
throwing them under, it's just a lesson, for me anyway, observing this, that sometimes, even though you want to save every last penny that you can, there are times you have to spend money
Things
to
catch
make
up with
the
you.
systems work.
Yeah.
They do.
So,
That's right.
yeah,
So-
so unfortunate, but I think it's good that Rockland stepped in, and we'll see how that all plays out.
Just like that.
Schools, we had the, 349,
So I fixed these amounts since your thing's been printed, since they did their presentation Monday night. So I increased in the board column the numbers to reflect what their presentation said.
so it looks like we're
With the-
increasing.
Right.
12,507, 545?
What's that?
Is that 12,507?
Or 67.
12,661,295.
Oh, he was, I think.
I was looking at the bottom.
total net schools funded.
Oh, the net schools, 12,567,545.
To get that reimbursement in.
Yeah.
Don't forget that.
Say it again, 'cause I can't see it.
12,567,545.
545.
Yeah.
You want to cheat?
I just went ahead.
They did not give us a number for adult education that night, so I left that one the same.
Okay. And we'll see what it actually is when we get there. Okay. I've had people come up to me and say, gosh, what can we do about the school's budget? And it's sort of like, you know what, you gotta go to the school board meetings.
Join the school board.
Nomination papers are available. 25 signatures. Pretty easy to do.
Yeah, they can come get 12 or so right here.
Yeah, I know, right, just pass it around.
Come to the
There you
next
go.
meeting, you can get a bunch here.
Gotcha.
Perfect, yeah.
All right, one last, Megan, insurance, 153.
Talking about malpractice.
The only real change here, other than, normal, policy increases and changes, is the addition of malpractice insurance. which we really, if we're gonna add an EMS service, we really don't have an option of having that protection. This is what they estimated it would cost for our annual malpractice insurance, so that's what I put in here.
All right.
Is that it?
Any questions or other I think that's it for tonight.
That's it.
Any
Darn it.
questions or other comments?
What,
Getting a manufacturer
that
for $1 billion
bridge
tax.
down in the park, the footbridge, the reconstruction of that, is that in the budget anywhere? Where's money for that coming from?
So the expectation is that we'll be able to pay for it through what was left in the infrastructure bond, which isn't much. We got a really good price, to replace it. It's not, it's not going to be, there was some plans that had been drawn up, it's not gonna be that ornate. It's gonna be pretty simple, but it will be wide, it'll be wider than what we had, and it will hold us over for a period of time until whatever is going to happen in terms of resilience and preventing flooding and all that happens, because that's sort of the problem is, we got some prices, we reached out, Gartley and Dorsey and others, what would it cost? $227,000 for a prefab bridge. And it's like, if we go down that road and we don't know what heights we're looking at, like let's get something through to get us through the next few years. And then at some point when we have that master plan, we'll talk, I think it's that on Monday the 25th, we'll talk about the harbor, have a strategic plan for the harbor that includes how high do we need to go, what do we need to armor our sides so the whole thing doesn't wash out, and what do we do for a bridge long-term? But that's further down.
Is there any likelihood or opportunity, we've spoken about it, but I'm
Yep.
throwing this to the board because when that new footbridge is built, is there any opportunity to have some sort of documentation / plaque?
Yep.
Because, I know both people that, know the person that built the first one, and I know the person that built the second one. And up until we talked, I don't think you did. But it's just good to have some historical documentation with person A built it between 1960 and 1992, and B did it 92 to 25.
Especially when that was back in the day when people would do it for free and gift it to the town.
Yeah,
No one's
From
watching.
person
who would-
A.
which person A, right? Yeah,
Is
no.
anyone watching who would be on that list?
No, it's probably their
Okay.
nighttime, probably.
All
for
right.
them, but-
No, that was on my mind of doing
Yeah,
something.
it's just, I
that-
think,
I don't think it costs much, or.
Because person A, which we'll not name, but we may if, somebody asks.
Yep.
They built it for nothing and donated the
My grandfather
stuff to the
made it.
town. It lasted 30 years,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah. We gotta talk
Yes.
about that. I had an idea
And person B actually used some of the material
from A.
from A to help keep some of the old with the new.
And I'm gonna
Yeah,
be
no,
the new kid on the block naive. Can we say the names?
Oh, I don't care.
Okay.
They're not watching, so I
curious.
guess it's okay.
It's his grandfather.
Yeah.
Maynard
Maynard
built the
Tolman.
first one, yeah.
Oh, Maynard did?
Yeah.
And Jeff McCool built the second one.
Yep.
So it's cool because both of them are local guys and both of them really loves the town.
Yeah,
And so, it'd be nice to find somebody, like you say, that would take it as a challenge to be able to create something and,
Yeah.
and they would know it was theirs.
There's a whole effort that's underway that Legacy Rockport are undertaking to sort of add signage and talk about the history, and it's broader than this,
Yeah,
but
that's a good
but I
it
think
could be wrapped
piece of
into.
it.
that was sort of what I was thinking.
There's a
but-
lot of stuff that gets done that people don't know about because
Right.
the people that do it don't want to be,
It'd be fun to have photographs of the
yeah, I don't
two
know whether,
bridges. Always those things you
I
forget.
don't know whether Maynard ever had any of them kicking around or not.
It's too bad we didn't leave it there a little bit longer, and one of these storms could have just washed it out, FEMA could have replaced it.
Let's put it back for the next storm.
Yeah.
And if it didn't wash it out, we could have helped push it. So, somehow. I don't know, maybe something.
I'm not hearing this.
I'm not advocating for it, I'm just saying it could have happened. Time to go all of a
You know,
sudden, huh?
and-
Look at that, it's 9:30.
You know, to think we thought it was gonna be done by 7.
I had no illusion. No illusions.
For the one before that.